T-minus 10, 9, 8,
The clock is operating. We're underway.
Tranquility Base here.
Endeavour, go at throttle.
Der Terroristenführer Osama Bin Laden hat offenbar mehr als 5 Jahre lang unbehelligt in seiner Residenz im pakistanischen Abbottabad gelebt. Das sagte jetzt US-Präsidentenberater John Brennan. Gestern hatten Soldaten der amerikanischen Eliteeinheit Navy SEALs Bin Laden dort schließlich aufgespürt und getötet. Dabei war sich der Geheimdienst CIA bis zum Beginn der Kommandoaktion nicht hundertprozentig sicher, ob sich der Top-Terrorist wirklich in dem Anwesen aufhält. Aus den USA Carsten Mierke.
Der Hobbyfilmer im nordpakistanischen Abbottabad hatte keine Ahnung, was sich da vor seinem Haus gerade abspielt. Diese Menschen im Situation Room des Weißen Hauses wissen es sehr wohl. Der Präsident mit seinen engsten Beratern verfolgt den Einsatz gegen Osama. Eine erstarrte Außenministerin, ein versteinerter Präsident. Minuten vergehen wie Tage, keiner sagt ein Wort. Es sind die Augenblicke, als sich in einer mondlosen Nacht 4 Hubschrauber der US-Elitetruppe Navy SEALs Osamas Anwesen nähern. Einer streift dabei eine Mauer und stürzt ab, dann beginnen die 79 Kommandosoldaten das 40-minütige Gefecht. Der getötete Osama wird verladen, der zerschellte Hubschrauber zur Spurenvernichtung gesprengt. Es ist der einzige Verlust bei den US-Spezialisten. Im Anwesen selber sterben insgesamt 5 Menschen. Zielperson killed in action, meldet der CIA-Chef. Da bricht im Situation Room der Präsident als erster das Schweigen. Wir haben ihn, sagt er erleichtert. Wäre die hochriskante Kommandoaktion schiefgegangen, hätte er politisch einpacken können. Jetzt bekommt er Anerkennung, selbst vom politischen Gegner. Es ist ein guter Tag für Amerika. Die ganze Welt ist sicherer. Es ist ein besserer Platz seit dem Tod Osama Bin Ladens. Ausgeführt wurde die Aktion von der besttrainiertesten Elitetruppe seines Landes, den Navy SEALs. Hier deren Werbefilm. Es sind eiskalte Spezialisten aus allen Militärbereichen.
Von denjenigen Leuten, die sich bewerben, fallen ungefähr 80% bei den Kursen wieder raus. Da wird also ziemlich hart gesiebt.
Völkerrechtlich ist diese Aktion der Navy SEALs zumindest fragwürdig. In den USA ist das jedoch kaum ein Thema. Man sorgt sich eher um den vermeintlichen Verbündeten Pakistan. Das Misstrauen wächst, die Beziehungen sind auf dem Tiefpunkt. Eigentlich Partner im Kampf gegen den Terror, beherbergt das Land den Staatsfeind Nummer 1. Präsident Zardari gibt sich ahnungslos, aber sein Geheimdienst gilt als Taliban unterwandert. Und auf den Straßen der USA diskutieren die Menschen noch ein ganz anderes Thema. Jetzt, wo Osama tot ist, warum sollen unsere Truppen weiter in Afghanistan bleiben? Nach dem Tag des großen Triumphs bleiben dem derzeit gefeierten Präsidenten doch noch ein paar Probleme.
Unser Reporter Dirk Emmerich ist jetzt im pakistanischen Abbottabad, also dort, wo sich Osama Bin Laden offenbar über Jahre hinweg versteckt hatte. Dirk, kann es wirklich sein, dass niemand in Pakistan von der geplanten Kommandoaktion der Amerikaner wusste?
Ich kann mir das nicht vorstellen. Darüber ist natürlich im Vorfeld gesprochen worden. Ich glaube allerdings, dass die Pakistanier ein doppeltes Spiel gespielt haben. Denn das, was wir hier in Abbottabad sehen, das kann auch nicht geheim gewesen sein. Es sind ja alle überrascht, dass Osama Bin Laden gerade hier war. Möglicherweise haben die Amerikaner genau das spitz bekommen. Man hat sich zusammengesetzt und überlegt, was zu tun ist und hat vielleicht ein Geschäft abgeschlossen. Pakistan liefert Osama Bin Laden ans Messer und bekommt dafür eine Belohnung von den Amerikanern, möglicherweise einen vorzeitigen Abzug aus Afghanistan im nächsten Jahr, weil Pakistan will im Nachbarland in einer Nachkriegsordnung eine ganz entscheidende Rolle spielen. Aber wir haben uns heute hier mal in der Stadt umgeguckt. Ich möchte Ihnen das gerne einmal zeigen.
Eine spontane Demonstration vor der Osama-Residenz heute Nachmittag. Vor 2 Tagen war dieser Ort hier noch völlig unbekannt. Jetzt steht er auf einmal im Fokus der Weltöffentlichkeit.
Hier hinter diesen 3 Meter hohen Mauern, schwer gesichert mit Stacheldraht, hatte sich über Jahre der am meisten gesuchte Mann der Welt verschanzt. Kein Telefon, kein Internet, kein Müll und trotzdem hat er keinen Verdacht erregt. Niemand will etwas mitbekommen haben.
In diesem Raum erfolgte der Zugriff. Wir wollen nicht glauben, dass wirklich niemand wusste, wer hier wohnte, und klopfen im Haus nebenan. Keine Reaktion. Eine Straße weiter treffen wir Samir, einen 29-jährigen Sozialarbeiter, der Flüchtlinge betreut. Er hat Angst, dass der Krieg aus Afghanistan jetzt hierher kommen wird. Es war wirklich eine schreckliche Nacht. Die Schießerei, dann die lauten Explosionen und all das bei uns in der Nachbarschaft neben der Moschee. Ob es richtig war, diesen Mann zu töten, ich bin nicht sicher. Weiter in Richtung Zentrum. Osama gilt hier noch immer als Volksheld. Skepsis über den Tod und Sympathie mischen sich miteinander. Osama ist doch nicht schlecht, er hat viel Gutes für Pakistan gemacht, sagt diese Frau. Solange die Leiche von Osama Bin Laden nicht der Öffentlichkeit präsentiert wird, kann man auch nicht sagen, dass er tot ist, so dieser Mann. Niemals ist er tot, ein Fake ist das alles. Abbottabad, die Stadt, in der nichts mehr so ist, wie es war, übt sich in Normalität.
Dirk, wie schätzen Sie das ein? Wie wird sich der Tod von Osama Bin Laden auf die Strukturen des Terrornetzwerks auswirken? Und was könnte das für die Sicherheitslage weltweit bedeuten?
Das Terrornetzwerk ist natürlich geschwächt, aber man muss sagen, Osama Bin Laden war in den letzten Jahren vor allen Dingen eine Symbolfigur. Gar nicht mit der großen charismatischen Ausstrahlkraft, aber er ist eine wichtige Figur, die gibt es jetzt nicht mehr. Und natürlich muss man weltweit befürchten, nicht nur hier in Pakistan, sondern überall, dass es mögliche Racheakte von Al-Qaida geben wird.
Vielen Dank für diese Einschätzung, Dirk Emmerich in Abbottabad. Ja, Sicherheitsbehörden weltweit sind wegen solch möglicher Racheakte schon jetzt in erhöhter Alarmbereitschaft. Im Nordwesten Großbritanniens hat die Polizei nahe der Atomanlage Sellafield 5 Männer wegen Terrorverdachts festgenommen. Sie seien bei einer Fahrzeugkontrolle aufgefallen, heißt es. Nach einem BBC-Bericht sollen die aus Bangladesch stammenden Männer Filmaufnahmen der Anlage gemacht haben. Über die Einschätzung der Gefahrenlage in Deutschland und anderen Ländern berichtet Lothar Keller.
Eine US-Botschaft hinter Gittern. In der slowakischen Hauptstadt Bratislava haben die Behörden die Sicherheitsmaßnahmen bereits erhöht. Auch in Berlin ist die US-Vertretung in Alarmbereitschaft. Zu sehen ist davon nichts. Bundesinnenminister Friedrich, zurzeit auf USA-Besuch, sieht auch keinen Grund daran, etwas zu ändern.
Ich glaube, das wird individuell vor Ort entschieden. Die Verantwortlichen wissen, mit diesen Dingen umzugehen. Es ist ja nicht das erste Mal, dass eine schwierige Situation eintritt. Aber wie gesagt, momentan gibt es keinerlei Hinweise und Anhaltspunkte.
Langfristig könnte Bin Ladens Tod den islamistischen Terror sogar schwächen. Das hoffen nicht nur die Sicherheitsbehörden, sondern auch viele Muslime in Deutschland. Als wir versuchen, junge Araber in Berlin zum Tode Osamas zu befragen, winken alle ab. Sie wollen nicht ständig aufs Neue erklären, dass auch sie den Terror ablehnen.
Leider hat man aber die scharfe Trennlinie zwischen Terrorismus, Extremismus und Islam sehr oft nicht so scharf gezogen. Und darunter litten die Muslime.
Auch in den US-Kasernen in Deutschland ist der Tod Bin Ladens vor allem mit Erleichterung aufgenommen worden. Die Sicherheitsvorkehrungen wurden nicht wesentlich verschärft, die Soldaten aber geben sich keiner Illusion hin. Die Taliban werden nicht aufhören, uns zu bekämpfen, nur weil Bin Laden tot ist, sagt er, der selber in Afghanistan gekämpft hat. Das wissen auch die deutschen Sicherheitsbehörden, zumal kurz vor Bin Ladens Tod die Festnahme von 3 Terrorverdächtigen in Düsseldorf gezeigt hat, dass die Extremisten in Deutschland weiter aktiv sind.
Wirbelsturm rast über Inselstaat. In Neuseeland ist bei einem Tornado mindestens ein Mensch ums Leben gekommen. Rund 15 weitere wurden verletzt. Der Wirbelsturm zog mit 200 Stundenkilometern über die Insel hinweg. Er riss das Dach von einem Einkaufszentrum herab, wirbelte Autos umher und entwurzelte Bäume. Vor allem im Norden der Großstadt Auckland richtete der Tornado schwere Schäden an.
Das extrem trockene Wetter bereitet Binnenschiffern, Bauern und Wasserversorgern derzeit Probleme. Schon im März und im April fiel in vielen Regionen Deutschlands nur ein Bruchteil der sonst üblichen Regenmenge und Besserung ist nicht in Sicht. Gleichzeitig erleben wir nach dem zweitwärmsten April seit Beginn der Wetteraufzeichnung auch noch mal ein Aufbäumen des Winters mit Frost in den Mittelgebirgen. Und dort fiel sogar Schnee. Martin Toroxl und Kai Reuker mit den Bildern.
Die Rheinwiesen bei Düsseldorf. So viel Wiese war selten und der Rhein selten so schmal und flach. Der niedrigste Pegel für einen Maianfang seit 100 Jahren. Für viele kam das offenbar überraschend. Auch die Binnenschiffer haben zurzeit wenig Freude. Jakob Boscher kommt aus Rotterdam. Seinen Frachter kann er nur noch zur Hälfte beladen. Andernfalls würde das Schiff auf Grund laufen.
Jeder braucht Wasser, um gut zu laufen. Die Container, die normal hier weg müssen, die kriegen wir nicht mehr mit.
Auch Landwirte kämpfen inzwischen gegen den Wassermangel. Herbert Meul aus der Nähe von Köln baut Rüben und Weißkohl an. Die Jungpflanzen hier kommen feucht in den Boden. Danach hilft nur noch Unterstützung von oben.
Wenn wir noch einen Monat so haben wie der April, dann wird es dramatisch. Dann wird es eng für die Landwirtschaft.
Und sogar die Stauseen gehen mit Tiefständen in die warme Jahreszeit. Für den Sommer soll's reichen, sagen zumindest die Betreiber. Bei so viel Wüstenklima wirken solche Bilder wie aus einer anderen Welt. Der Brocken heute tief verschneit. Schon im Flachland war es vielerorts frostig, in den Mittelgebirgen dann das hier.
Tiefster Winter.
Tiefster Winter.
Eindeutig.
Wir dachten, es würde die Sonne scheinen und ein wenig wärmer sein.
Sogar die Winterdienste bekamen wie hier im Erzgebirge wieder Arbeit. 10 Tage vor den Eisheiligen ein ganz unplanmäßiger Kälteeinbruch.
Mit den Eisheiligen kann man diesen Kälterückfall schlecht in Verbindung bringen, denn die Eisheiligen sind erst vom 11. bis 14. Mai. Und je näher wir jetzt diesem Datum kommen, desto wärmer wird es.
Und da dürfen sich viele Regionen wieder auf neue Wärmerekorde einstellen und natürlich weiterhin auf Trockenheit.
Hier floss vor einigen Tagen noch der Rhein. Jetzt ist er weg, hat sich tief in sein Flussbett verzogen. 1,1 Meter ist der Pegelstand in Düsseldorf. So niedrig war das Wasser hier seit 100 Jahren nicht mehr. Bernd Schönfelder vom Wasser- und Schifffahrtsamt notiert jede Viertelstunde den Pegelstein des Rheins bei Duisburg. Und auch hier scheint es einen Rekord zu geben.
Heute haben wir einen Wasserstand von 2,35 Meter am Pegelruhrort. Im Vergleich zu den letzten 10 Jahren ist der Wasserstand heute extrem niedrig. Wir hätten heute erwarten können auf unserer Aufzeichnung ca. 4,10 Meter.
Auch die anderen Flüsse im Land haben sich dünne gemacht. So führt die Weser so wenig Wasser, dass das Rad der Schiffmühle bei Minden stillsteht. Ähnliches Bild in Ostwestfalen. Der Pegel der Pader bei Paderborn ist um rund 20 Zentimeter gesunken. Für die Landwirtschaft ist die Trockenheit eine Katastrophe. Hans-Leo Sieben könnte heulen, wenn er seine Kartoffeln sieht. Denn im Moment sehen die eher aus wie Sojabohnen.
Ja, also da ist jetzt noch gar nichts. Da ist eine Kartoffel, wenn man also ganz genau hinschaut, wird das vielleicht noch eine werden, aber auch nur, wenn die jetzt ganz bald viel Wasser kriegt.
Verkümmerte Pflanzen, kein Regen, strammer Wind. Es dörrt die Böden aus. Eigentlich müssten seine Felder und Kartoffeln schon so aussehen wie auf diesen Feldern ein paar 100 Meter weiter. Grüne Krone, ausgewachsene Knollen. Hier allerdings bewässert der Landwirt aus Tönnesforst rund um die Uhr, denn sonst wächst hier nichts.
Also wir müssen uns durchkämpfen und müssen halt künstlich bewässern, so gut es eben geht, um die Pflanzen einigermaßen am Leben zu halten und alles zu tun, was in unserer Kraft steht.
Doch bei diesen Weihnachtsbaumsetzlingen in Radevorm Wald ist alles zu spät. Erst vor einigen Wochen gepflanzt, sind sie jetzt schon vertrocknet. Lothar Kirschsieper bleibt nichts anderes übrig, als die Pflanzen rauszureißen und neue zu setzen. Noch nicht ganz so dramatisch ist die Trockenheit für die Binnenschifffahrt. Peter de Boot hat Raps geladen. Der Niederländer ist vor 3 Tagen aus Metz in Frankreich weggefahren. Jetzt wird die Ladung im Neusser Hafen gelöscht. An Bord hat er 2000 Tonnen. 1000 Tonnen mehr hätte er laden können, wenn der Rhein mehr Wasser führen würde. Bisher macht ihm der niedrige Wasserstand noch keinen Strich durch die Rechnung. Ganz im Gegenteil.
Als Binnenschiffer heißt das, wenn das Wasser niedriger ist, dass wir davon profitieren. Wir nehmen nicht viel Ladung mehr mit, deshalb werden mehr Schiffe gebraucht. Die Verlader, die müssen wirklich dann suchen nach Schiffen und deshalb müssen die auch mehr unterhandeln.
Denn die Ware muss bei den Kunden ankommen und wenn die Schiffe weniger Fracht mitnehmen können, müssen mehr Frachter fahren. Wenigstens bei der Binnenschifffahrt ist noch alles gut. Sollte der Pegel des Rheins aber weiter sinken, wird es auch für Peter de Boot kritisch.
Ja, haben wir zu viel Regen, wollen wir mehr Sonne, haben wir zu viel Sonne, wollen wir mehr Regen, nie ist es gut, wie es ist.
Aber dass es gute Gründe gibt, die Trockenheit auf jeden Fall blöd zu finden, das haben wir ja gerade ausgiebig gesehen. Also, Claudia Kleinert, kurzer Ausblick, jetzt schon mal von dir vorab. Wann regnet es bitte schon endlich wieder?
Naja, richtiger Regen würde ja heißen, dass es flächendeckend mal über längere Zeit regnet, sodass der Boden eben wirklich durchnässt wird. Und das ist nicht in Sicht. Selbst wenn es morgen im Norden Nordrhein-Westfalens immer mal wieder ein paar Schauer gibt, das ist im Endeffekt dann nur ein Tropfen auf den heißen Stein. Donnerstag, Freitag trocken, Samstag trocken, Sonntag wahrscheinlich im Nachmittagsverlauf Schauer und Gewitter. Das ist dann auch wieder nur punktueller Regen, der fallen wird. Das bei 26 Grad. Die Wärme wird diese Feuchtigkeit sofort wieder austrocknen, beziehungsweise wird es sofort wieder auslöschen, das, was da gefallen ist. Dementsprechend Entwarnung für Landwirte oder auch den Rheinpegel im Moment nicht in Sicht.
Dankeschön, Claudia, für den Moment. Mehr Wetter dann von dir in einer guten Viertelstunde.
Und bis dahin fragen wir uns, was ist denn da los?
Seit Wochen hat es nicht mehr ordentlich geregnet und die Meteorologen glauben, dass das auch noch ein paar Tage so bleibt. Was das für Folgen für uns alle hat und ob wir bald komplett auf dem Trockenen sitzen, verrät Ihnen Anne Mensing.
Nichts als Dürre, Staub und Trockenheit. Ganz NRW gleicht einer Staub- und Steinwüste, wo eigentlich der Rhein fließt, ein ausgetrocknetes Flussbett. Der Pegelstand in Köln nicht mal 1,50 Meter. Eine Katastrophe für NRWs Binnenschiffer, denn der niedrige Pegel bedeutet auch weniger Fracht. Statt 4000 Tonnen kann Jakob Boscher aus Rotterdam nur 2000 laden.
Die Container, die normal hier weg müssen, die kriegen wir nicht mehr mit. Das Einsatz von mehreren Schiffen wird erwartet jetzt. Sonst kriegen wir die Container nicht runter in Rotterdam. Man wollte am liebsten so viel wie möglich Wasser haben, dass das Rivier ein bisschen höher steht, dass man vernünftig fahren könnte und alle Container mitnehmen können.
Und nicht nur der Rhein braucht endlich eine Pause von der gnadenlosen Sonne. Auch Bauer Herbert Meul aus Bedberg. Und wo Wettergott Petrus nicht aktiv wird, greift der Bauer selbst ein. Aber das reicht nicht.
Es gibt keinen, glaube ich, seltenen Landwirt, der alle Flächen beregnen kann. Und von daher sind die Möglichkeiten bei uns doch sehr eingeschränkt. Der Wetterbericht sagt ja für die nächsten 16 Tage keinen nennenswerten Niederschlag. Also ich will nicht pessimistisch sein, die Hoffnung stirbt zuletzt. Aber ich denke schon, dass wir in diesem Jahr mit den Trockenschäden schon zu kämpfen haben.
Wenn die Dürre anhält, wird der Preis für seinen Blumenkohl steigen. Und als ob das nicht schon reicht, steigt nun auch die Gefahr für Waldbrände. Bis zum Wochenende erwarten Forstwirte die zweithöchste Gefahrenstufe.
Es muss schon etwas länger regnen und auch kräftig, also so 15, 20 Millimeter müssen schon fallen, damit das wirklich sich auswirkt. Sonst ist die Bodenvegetation und das Laub und das Holz eben immer noch so trocken, dass es nach 2, 3 Tagen Wind und Sonne wieder feuergefährlich ist.
Doch Regen ist laut Meteorologen bis mindestens Anfang nächster Woche nicht in Sicht. Und während die einen unter der Trockenheit ächzen, freuen sich NRWs Sonnenanbeter.
Ich habe es gern sonnig und warm und die Kälte, die mag ich gar nicht gut leiden. Und Regen ist ungemütlich und von daher ist mir dieses Klima so viel lieber.
Es wäre schön, wenn es auch mal wieder regnen würde, ansonsten ist es herrlich.
Das schöne Wetter halt allgemein ist natürlich besser als Regen, weil Sonne mag ja eigentlich jeder lieber als Regen. So.
Eben nur fast jeder. Bauern und Förster hoffen auf Regen und beten, dass es dann nicht nur ein Tropfen auf den heißen Stein ist.
Minita, thousands of people are evacuated from their homes right now because we're dealing with widespread record flooding through parts of the Midwest. We're talking all along the Mississippi River as well as the Ohio River. We're talking record flooding in some locations. We're seeing it roughly about 6 meters above flood stage. We're talking 20 feet. Let's go over to some aerial video. And this is going to give you an idea of how bad this is. This is actually coming out of Tennessee. And look at homes just submerged. It really looks like an island. Well, the problem is it's going to take weeks before we start to see more of this water receding across parts of the Midwest. As I take you back over in this graphic right here, anywhere in green, this is where we're dealing with that flooding. You can see affecting Missouri, Illinois, Indiana, Tennessee, Arkansas, you name it. It's this area right along the rivers that's really being hard hit. And if you remember yesterday, I told you about a town in Illinois where they actually had to break a levee in nearby Missouri to help alleviate some of the flooding there. Well, let's go to some of this video here, and it's going to show you what it looks like. This is actually out of Missouri County. Now, farmland across this region now being flooded because they were trying to protect the homes of more than 2,000 people in nearby Cairo. Well, again, this is what it looks like there. As I take you back over to give you just an idea how big and widespread this flooding is, it's roughly about 280,000 kilometers, and it's roughly the size of the UK. Anywhere in red, we are dealing with flooding, and we're potentially going to be looking at more immediate flooding across this region. And the gauges that you're seeing is, say, in the purple and the red, that's showing you where the flooding is at moderate to major flood stage. Now, the good news is we're getting a break from the rainfall. Really, as we go through the next several days, we're not going to be tapping into that Gulf moisture, so that means heavier rainfall is not going to be in the forecast. That is the bright news. Now, I want to talk about something coming out of New Zealand, a very rare feature there. They actually had a pretty strong tornado. Let's go over to this video of a tornado there, and you're looking at this video, and it actually caused a good amount of damage. You'll start to see it weaken, but let me show you some of the damage left behind in this region. We're talking about cars tossed around. Look at that trampoline on top of a home there. Well, winds were reportedly at 200 kilometers per hour. That works out to about 110 miles per hour. They typically see roughly, get this, about 20 tornadoes a year. They're usually very short-lived and they don't pop up very often across that region. As I show you right now, New Zealand still dealing with some rain, but no severe weather across that region. That is from one of our iReporters. You always want to be safe for our reporters. Back over to Manita and Zane.
In the room with bin Laden, a woman, bin Laden's wife, rushed the U.S. assaulter and was shot in the leg but not killed. Bin Laden was then shot and killed. He was not armed.
The scene in the White House Situation Room as news of the death of Osama bin Laden came in may have been the most dramatic moment of the Obama presidency. And Dennis McDonough was there. He's the President's Deputy National Security Advisor, and he joins me now. Mr. McDonough, I'm going to come to those extraordinary scenes that we saw in those photographs. What a moment there must have been. But first, I want to bring us up to speed with the news of the photographs of a dead Osama bin Laden. What is the current situation with regard to those?
Well, I think as we've indicated during the course of the last several days, we're making some consideration of the potential ramifications of the release of any such photos. I think it's important to put it in the context of all the information that has been put out in the last 36 hours or so, to include a DNA analysis, a facial recognition analysis, a lot of the intelligence that has gone into and come out of the raid that night. And then, of course, to keep in mind that does not seem to be any credible refutation of the basic fact that Osama bin Laden is dead. Nevertheless, we have taken a look at the potential ramifications of this, of inserting new images, which we know will be misused and propagandized by our enemies, and trying to make some decisions about the ramifications of that for the safety of our troops and our allies' troops, the safety of our diplomats and our intelligence professionals, and the safety of private Americans who are overseas, and including private citizens of our allied countries. So we'll make those decisions based on the assessments that we're getting, and we'll do that in the next several days.
I mean, all that is perfectly understandable, but clearly there's another side to this coin, which is that there are already elements within the Islamic world beginning to question the veracity of Osama bin Laden's death. And clearly the best way to establish that he is dead is to release one of these photographs.
Oh, I don't know that that's the best way to establish it, Pierce. I think there's probably a number of different ways, and that's why we've put made the kind of information available that we've made available in the last 36 hours. So I also, I don't know that you've seen it. Maybe you have. I haven't really seen anything credible that's doubting the fact that Osama bin Laden is dead. And so, again, we'll consider the context and we'll consider the ramifications and make that decision. But I do think it's important to keep in mind the brilliance of this operation as a result of the gutsy decision the president made. But the brilliance also comes from the bravery of those operators that did this, and also the case that the intelligence professionals put together over the course, painstakingly put together over the course of several years, where the president's very proud of and gratified by that great work.
I mean, one final question with regard to the pictures. Have you actually seen them yourself?
I've seen some pictures, yes.
And what do they depict?
Oh, I'm not going to get into trying to describe them. I think it leaves no doubt the basic fact that Osama bin Laden is dead.
Moving to the extraordinary photographs that came out yesterday from what happened on Sunday. You were there, right in the middle of this, next to Hillary Clinton, next to Barack Obama. In the end, you're human beings witnessing this extraordinary event unfurling. Were you able to actually see any video footage from the scene as it happened?
No, we weren't able to see video footage from the scene. We were getting real-time updates in a variety of media, but such video footage was not available. I do think it was quite remarkable that the president maintained his steely demeanor throughout this, notwithstanding, as John Brennan depicted yesterday, the anxious moments that I think occupied many of us during that time. But I also think that what's important in my mind about that picture is I think it's emblematic of the kind of teamwork that went into the generation of the options for the president around this operation. I think that's also emblematic of the president's leadership and the leadership of Tom Donilon, who ran a very steadying process throughout this to try to tee up the options for decision to the president.
But tell me, when you're in that kind of situation, I mean, it must be incredibly tense. Describe for me, paint a picture of what it was like for you all.
Oh, I think it is tense, but what I witnessed from the president in those couple hours in the Situation Room was the kind of decisiveness that informed his decision-making throughout this process since, frankly, in late May 2009 when he called in his CIA director and ordered him to rededicate additional assets to the hunt for bin Laden. And then also, as we considered options over the course, he considered options over the course of the last several months to finally effect the final operation here. I was informed really by two big issues. One is bringing to closure this issue for the country, this issue of bin Laden. And that obviously was front and center in his mind. And then the next issue, which was equally important to the president, of course, was the risk that these operators, these assaulters were undertaking in this very daring raid. And those were the two factors that not only informed his decisions heading up to Sunday, but also were obviously quite evident in his mind and in the discussions he was having on Sunday in that room.
Do you know if the president's spoken directly to the Navy SEALs involved in this mission yet?
He has not yet, no.
Does he plan to?
I anticipate he will.
What kind of thing would you imagine he'd say?
Oh, I think they'll have an opportunity to talk directly to them.
In relation to Pakistan here, I mean, clearly absolutely nobody with a brain cell believes that the Pakistani authorities knew nothing about this, because the proximity of bin Laden's compound to Pakistan military and intelligence services is absurdly small here, isn't it? I mean, how can you trust them after this?
Well, it's not a matter of trust. It's a matter of finding common interest and working together with them. I think over the course of 10 years or so here now, we've had moments of great collaboration, cooperation in this fight against al-Qaeda. Pakistani civilians, Pakistani troops have sacrificed a great deal because of the hateful and heinous terrorist acts of al-Qaeda. And we saw in 2007 when al-Qaeda declared war on Pakistan. And we continue to see till this day with al-Qaeda wanting to get its hands on Pakistan's weapons of mass destruction. So Pakistanis recognize the extreme threat that al-Qaeda poses to them and to the Pakistani state. And so what we're going to do is continue to push to try to make sure that we're cooperating with them, collaborating with them as closely as we can, but doing so in such a way as to be make sure that we're all accountable, including Pakistanis being accountable for the outcome of that effort. Obviously, there's been a lot of questions raised about this particular compound. We're working to get to the bottom of it. I know that Congress here is doing the same thing. And my hunch is that there's a public debate in Pakistan about the same issue.
I mean, you're being very diplomatic there, but let me spin this on its head. If Pakistan was hunting a terrorist who had killed over 3,000 of their people, and they discovered after 10 years that he was residing in a compound right next to an American military base where your senior intelligence people were also working, they'd be entitled to be pretty cheesed off, wouldn't they?
Well, it's a kind of a perfect hypothetical, Pierce, that I'm going to choose to not answer. But here's what I do know what we will do, including with the Pakistanis, to the greatest extent possible, which is we're going to take al-Qaeda in the current state it's in, with its leader now dead, and we're going to drive even harder now to ensure that the rest of al-Qaeda is buried with its leader.
And finally, what was your personal reaction the moment you heard that the mission was successful and bin Laden was dead?
My personal reaction was threefold. One, tremendous appreciation for the hard work from our intelligence community that went in to build the case. As you, I'm sure, have heard, going into this, there was no guarantee that bin Laden was going to be at that facility. So one, great appreciation for the intelligence community. Two, great admiration for the bravery and patience of the operators, the assaulters who carried out the mission that day. And then three, great relief that so many of the families of the victims of 9/11, of the embassy bombings in Africa, the families of the victims of the bombing of the USS Cole, that they could now get some closure on this issue. Obviously, those are the issues that, as I said, weighed very heavily on the president as he considered this, and why, at the end of the day, he took the decision that he did, because he thought it was very important that we come to some closure on this matter.
I mean, I don't doubt for a moment that all those thoughts were in your mind, but I kind of hope for a slightly more spontaneous one-liner when you heard that he was dead. Something on the lines of "got him" or something.
Well, that's exactly what the president said, but that spontaneity is not my strong suit, and the spontaneity is not a big characteristic in the Situation Room.
Well, that's probably just as well. That's why you're there and I'm here. Dennis McDonough, thank you very much indeed.
Pierce, thanks for the opportunity. I appreciate it.
I appreciate it too. Thank you.
Der britische Thronfolger Prinz Charles ist zu einer Visite in der US-Hauptstadt Washington eingetroffen. Am Morgen stattete er den Richtern des obersten Gerichtshofs einen Besuch ab. Anschließend schaute sich der begeisterte Hobbygärtner auf einem Bauernhof um. Im Laufe des Tages ist auch ein Treffen mit US-Präsident Obama geplant.
Okay. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Before I take your questions, I'd just like to say to you that the President has made the decision not to release any of the photographs of the deceased Osama bin Laden. And rather than, first, I will give you the language the President used when he was recently interviewed about an hour ago to explain his decision. This is an interview with CBS 60 Minutes, Steve Croft. The President was asked, well, he said that they were discussing when bin Laden's body was taken out of the compound. The President was asked about how he knew it was him. And he said, when they landed, we had very strong confirmation at that point that it was him. Photographs had been taken. Facial analysis indicated that, in fact, it was him. We hadn't yet done DNA testing, but at that point, we were 95% sure. Question, did you see the pictures? The President, yes. Question, what was your reaction when you saw them? The President, it was him. Question, why didn't you release them? The President, we discussed this internally. Keep in mind that we are absolutely certain that this was him. We've done DNA sampling and testing, and so there is no doubt that we killed Osama bin Laden. It is important for us to make sure that very graphic photos of somebody who was shot in the head are not floating around as an incitement to additional violence or as a propaganda tool. That's not who we are. We don't trot out this stuff as trophies. The fact of the matter is, this was somebody who was deserving of the justice that he received. And I think Americans and people around the world are glad that he is gone. But we don't need to spike the football. And I think that given the graphic nature of these photos, it would create some national security risk. And I've discussed this with Bob Gates and Hillary Clinton and my intelligence teams, and they all agree. Question, there are people in Pakistan, for example, who say, look, this is all a lie. Obama, this is another American trick. Osama is not dead. The President. The truth is that we were monitoring worldwide reaction. There is no doubt that that bin Laden is dead. Certainly, there is no doubt among Al-Qaeda members that he is dead. And so we don't think that a photograph in and of itself is going to make any difference. There are going to be some folks who deny it. The fact of the matter is, you will not see bin Laden walking on this earth again. That's the conclusion of the excerpt, and I think states rather thoroughly why the President made the decision that he did. With that, I'll take your questions. Ben.
Thanks, Jay. Based on those comments, the President made a very compelling case why not to release the photos. So what was the internal debate, and was he ever seriously considering releasing photos?
Well, obviously the photos didn't exist until bin Laden was killed. So there's not a great deal of time between then and the decision. There are obviously arguments to be made on either side. The fact of the matter is, as the President described, these are graphic photographs of someone who was shot in the face, or the head, rather, and it is not in our national security interests to allow those images, as has been in the past been the case, to become icons to rally opinion against the United States. The President's #1 priority is the safety and security of American citizens at home and Americans abroad. There is no need to release these photographs to establish Osama bin Laden's identity, and he saw no other compelling reason to release them given the potential for national security risks, and further because he believes, as he said so clearly, this is not who we are.
So was he, in the time period you're discussing, the moment he had the photos until now that we know the answer, was he grappling with this at all, or was his stand clear and he was just gathering other opinions?
Well, I don't know about the evolution of his decision-making process. When I've heard him discuss it, he held this opinion very firmly, and he has held that opinion very firmly. But this is a very short period of time. Obviously, he wanted to hear the opinions of others, but he was very clear about his view on this, and obviously his decision is categorical.
One other question. Director Panetta, in one of the interviews he did yesterday, said the government obviously has been talking about how best to do this, but I don't think there was any question that ultimately a photograph would be presented to the public.
Well,
how do you explain that?
What I would say is that there are compelling arguments for, in general, the release of information, and you know, there's a discussion to be had about the pros and cons, and the president engaged in that discussion and made a decision. Every member of the national security team is aware of and expressed the downside of releasing, which is, I think, weighed heavily on the president in terms of the potential risks it would pose to Americans serving abroad and Americans traveling abroad. So the idea that this was 100% obvious, I mean, yeah, that's the fact of the matter is the president never gets to make a decision that's 100% obvious, because those kind of decisions never get to his desk.
Well, that I understand, but I'm saying his comment was there was no question that a photograph was legal. Obviously,
well, look, the thing is, the president made this decision. He consulted members of his national security team. There's reasonable arguments to be made. The president felt very strongly and made the decision he made.
As we await for President Obama to arrive at the memorial site, let's get some more now on the war in Afghanistan post-Bin Laden that you were just discussing with the ambassador there, Aisha. President Obama's already promised to withdraw troops beginning in July, but now lawmakers in Washington are pressing him for a timeline. Kate Rubin is standing by for us on Capitol Hill. What is the latest on this? Is there a sense now that lawmakers want to see troops out of Afghanistan as soon as possible?
That really is it, Fanula, and this is being really spearheaded by two members of Congress, and this is a bipartisan group of liberal Democrats as well as fiscal conservatives and some libertarian-leaning Republicans as well. Now, this is spearheaded by two people I had said, a Republican congressman from North Carolina, Walter Jones, and a Democratic congressman from Massachusetts, Jim McGovern. They've both long been opposed to the war, but they say especially now with the death of Osama bin Laden, it is time for the United States to get out of Afghanistan altogether and do that sooner rather than later. The question of sooner rather than later is really where they're focusing. They are unveiling a bill today that is pushing for a concrete plan from the president. They want something more than what they were just describing in a press conference of a token withdrawal. They want something more. They want concrete dates, a concrete timeline of getting the last U.S. troop, last U.S. presence out of Afghanistan. And we listened to a little bit of the press conference of some of the members of Congress that were speaking just a short time ago. Listen here to a little bit of that.
But what started out as a quick war on October 7th, 2001, to wipe out al-Qaeda leader Osama bin Laden and the Taliban, has turned into a campaign that seemingly has no end in sight, ripping our nation's most precious treasures from their families and costing us more than $8 billion per month. But that original mission has now been accomplished, and bin Laden's demise in Pakistan is additional proof that we should re-examine our ongoing mission in Afghanistan. My Rhode Island constituents have grown rightfully weary of this irresponsible war. We should no longer be sending billions of American taxpayer dollars to the Afghan people for their schools, their hospitals, their roads, bridges, and police at the expense of making those same investments in our own country.
Now, Fionnuala, the death of Osama bin Laden has really been a boost to these members of Congress who have been for quite a long time asking for the United States to get out of Afghanistan. But now this bill, as I had mentioned, that they're unveiling today, it's calling for concrete timeline and dates from the president of how they're going to get U.S. out of Afghanistan. Also, it's calling for the president to specifically provide reports on how much the continued fight in Afghanistan is costing, as well as including the increases to deficits and debt. And on the flip side of that, also would require that the president provide how much the country could be saving if the White House would accelerate the pullout of Afghanistan. And they're talking about a timeline somewhere of 6 months, if some of these members of Congress. So they're really trying to use this opportunity. They say that Al-Qaeda is not even in Afghanistan anymore, as they think, and they think this will save money for the United States, especially while we're talking about debts and deficits, and also will save lives. And that's why they're trying to jump on this today and push for this bill to move forward.
All right, Kate, is it fair to say that the mood on Capitol Hill is reflected in the country, that nearly 10 years after 9/11, that America is moving into a more isolationist phase on the global stage?
I would say, Fionnuala, that these members of Congress, they say that the Americans have grown very weary. They say it's been 10 years, and they say that the goal in Afghanistan is kind of a moving target, and the definition of success is kind of a moving target. But I will tell you, though, that leaders here in Congress, as well as the White House, this is going to be a very tough sell, what they're trying to pitch right now. The Republican leader of the House, the Speaker Boehner, he said that the death of Osama bin Laden means that our engagement in Afghanistan is more important, not less. That is almost echoed by Democratic leaders in the House. Even Nancy Pelosi is saying that the plan that the White House has in place is the plan that needs to stay in place, that the withdrawal starts in July and should be based on conditions on the ground. Otherwise, they say it would be dangerous to be accelerating that and not letting it be based on conditions on the ground. The White House says the same thing, so we'll see how far this piece of legislation goes. They know they have an uphill battle, but they say it's worth it.
All right, thanks very much indeed. Joining us, Kate Baldwin there from Capitol Hill. President Barack Obama has arrived at JFK Airport in New York. He will be on his way very shortly to Ground Zero here, where we know he's going to lay a wreath at the memorial. He'll also be visiting a firehouse. Of course, firemen losing their lives more than 300 nearly 10 years ago on 9/11. And he will also be meeting with families of the victims. This is a huge story in New York. You can feel the electricity almost in the air. Just ramp up a little as there are more helicopters overhead and an increased security presence. Just that little sense that somebody important is on the ground. And a programming note, Aisha, CNN will join our sister network, CNN USA, in covering Barack Obama's first visit to Ground Zero as president. CNN's Anderson Cooper will anchor our live coverage beginning at the top of the hour. That is coming up in just about 20 minutes from now. From Ground Zero, back to you in Atlanta.
Fionnuala, appreciate it. Thank you. A disheartening development for tornado survivors in America's South. What little is left of their belongings is now being looted. And large areas of land are underwater along the Mississippi River. Included are communities large and small and some of the most productive farmland in the world. A week after a record number of tornadoes chewed through parts of the South, an unfortunate but predicted development there. While people try to clean up and rebuild their lives, looters and con artists are taking advantage of the disaster across the region.
My wife was like I said, she'd been up here and trying to find stuff and caught two guys from Ringo up here carrying arms loads of stuff off. And all I want to do is ask people, this is our life. I mean, what we can find is sentimental. Just please, don't come up here and loot. That is the most lowest life person to do something to somebody like this in this position. I can't understand what would go through somebody's mind doing that.
Absolutely appalling. Well, officials say 178 tornadoes have been confirmed as part of the storms that raked the region in late April, making it the largest recorded tornado outbreak in U.S. history. While flooding along the Mississippi River is also breaking records, it's a disaster unfolding in slow motion as the floodwater flows south. Now, that river is considered America's spine. It's one of the longest and most important rivers in the world. Cities and towns all along the Mississippi River are being submerged, so are vast fields of crops, and all during a time of skyrocketing food prices. Well, we're also following a developing story, this one out of Mexico now. An earthquake is hit in the southwestern part of the country. Maya Ramos joins us now from the International Weather Center with more on that. Mari?
You know, this earthquake happened in the early morning hours, about 2 hours ago in Mexico City. This dot that you see right here indicates the epicenter of the quake. So let's go ahead and zoom in and take a look, see what we're having. We're about 300 kilometers directly south of Mexico City in the state of Guerrero. This also takes us about 140 kilometers from the resort city of Acapulco, Mexico. They did feel some shaking, light reportedly in Acapulco, but the epicenter here in the mountains, 5.8 according to the USGS, about 10 kilometers deep, and the shaking was felt, of course, closest to the epicenters where we had the strongest shaking reported, strong to very strong. And these cities that you see right here, these towns that you see right here that would have felt the strongest shaking have about 140, a population of about 145,000 to maybe 200,000 people total that would have been in that area of the most intense shaking. Aisha, we do not have any reports of serious damage or injuries. I want to show you some video that we have from Mexico City, which, like I said, is about 300 kilometers north of the epicenter. And as a precaution, when the earthquakes happen in Mexico City, there are evacuations of the buildings. So everyone was falling out into the parks and galleries outside of the high rises in Mexico City. And you can see a group of people there standing under the trees just waiting for the all clear. And fortunately, that all clear was already given. If I point it near just south of Mexico City, no immediate reports of damage or injuries, fortunately. Let's go ahead and move on. I want to talk a little bit more about Mexico. And in the weather here, they've had some very warm temperatures, but fortunately staying dry right now. This little area of low pressure here to the south look kind of interesting. You know, it's still very early here. The tropical cyclone season, the hurricane season doesn't begin in this part of the Pacific Ocean until we get to May 15th. That's officially the start. Every once in a while, you'll see something pop up early. Right now, we'll watch that, but it doesn't look like it's going to do too much. But on the other side of the Pacific, there, the season really cyclones can happen any time of the year. This is the Western Pacific, and right here off the coast of the Philippines, we're watching an area of disturbed weather. This would be, if it does develop, the first tropical cyclone of the season. It's a little bit late in the season to be looking just at the first one, to be quite honest. Either way, whether or not this storm develops, Aisha, it is bringing some very heavy rain in the central and southern Philippines, and it will be a concern for the next few days. Back to you.
Thank you, Mari, and we will be watching. Thank you. We will take you back to Ground Zero in just a moment. U.S. President Barack Obama is expected to arrive there shortly. Stay with us. We want to show you these pictures now of New York's Ground Zero, the site where the Twin Towers once stood. Right now it is a construction site as workers hurriedly work to complete a memorial project along with the new Freedom Tower, which they hope will be completed by the time of the 10th anniversary this September. President Obama making his way to Ground Zero for a remembrance ceremony later today. Our Fanula Sweeney is there in New York to cover the president's visit and of course, the continued reaction to the news of Osama bin Laden's death. And she joins us now. Fanula.
All right, as we wait for President Obama now, we understand in the chopper on his way to Ground Zero. Let's look at how the mood in New York is summed up by the New York Post. Bittersweet is the theme that it is carrying and has been all week, essentially, saying that while Osama bin Laden, and it's good that he is dead, it does avenge 9/11, it's a bittersweet moment as those who lost loved ones or indeed were in the trade towers on that day will still be affected. It brings up lots of memories. New Yorkers, as they gear up for the 10th anniversary of 9/11, obviously on September the 11th, really reflecting about what took place here on that fateful day back in September 2001. For President Obama, this is not quite what he hoped for as a display of unity for the country, in that President George W. Bush, the man who wanted Osama bin Laden dead or alive, has declined his invitation to come here, preferring to stay out of the spotlight. But it cannot be forgotten that we are almost into an election campaign. It is going to be 2012 soon upon us. November 2012 may seem a long way away, but the battle lines are being drawn, and the political debate here in the United States increasingly vitriolic. For the moment, President Obama trying to make the most of this display of unity in a country which wanted so badly to see 9/11 avenged. As a result, it went into Afghanistan. It's still there. It then went into Iraq, and it is an inconclusive result from Iraq, and that is something that Americans find hard to deal with. And essentially now, Americans and New Yorkers in particular are hoping to get a sense of closure, another word that's been talked about a lot this week, as they wait for their U.S. president to arrive at Ground Zero. We know he's going to go to a firehouse station. More than 300 firemen lost their lives in Ground Zero. We also know he's going to meet families of those who died on the day of 9/11. And really here, interesting to see how New Yorkers take to the U.S. president's visit and whether or not he can capitalize on this beyond this show of unity around the country on this day. That does it for us here at the International Desk, at least from Ground Zero. Back to you, Aisha, in Atlanta.
Fanula, thank you. Well, that does it for us here at the International Desk in Atlanta. I'm Aisha Sasay. Stay with CNN now for special live coverage of U.S. President Obama's visit to Ground Zero in New York, hosted by our very own Anderson Cooper.
President Obama honors the spirit of Americans and pays tribute to the almost 3,000 lives lost in the September 11th attacks. I'm Wolf Blitzer in Washington, and we want to welcome our viewers here in the United States and around the world to CNN Newsroom's special coverage of the president's visit to Ground Zero. This is an important day for the President of the United States. It's an important day for the American people. Anderson Cooper is going to be joining us shortly. Mr. Obama's visit comes just 6 days after he ordered the raid that killed al-Qaeda leader Osama bin Laden, the architect of the terrorist attacks. The president meets with families of the 9/11 victims. He visits a fire station that lost 15 firefighters, and he lays a wreath at the hallowed ground where the World Trade Center once stood. The site has certainly changed a lot since President Obama was there during the presidential campaign. Just take a look at these amazing time-lapse images showing the progress. The pictures are from the upcoming documentary, Rebirth. Our coverage of today's visit by President Obama will focus on people who lost loved ones in the terrorist attacks, people like the first responders who died saving others, including the 343 New York City firefighters killed in the attacks. This hour, the president visits the Engine 54 firehouse to honor the memory of the firefighters, the police, and other first responders. It's about the people who have gathered at Ground Zero today to remember the victims. And it's about the people around the country and indeed around the world who rallied together in the aftermath of the horrific attacks of September 11th. CNN's Mary Snow is joining us now from the fire station Engine 54 firehouse, which lost 15 firefighters on 9/11. Set the scene for us, Mary.
Well, Wolf, we're anticipating the president to arrive here within the half hour, and as you can imagine, security has been stepped up throughout the morning. Once the president gets closer, traffic will be blocked off around this firehouse, and we're told that he will probably be here for about 45 minutes. He may make some remarks inside the firehouse. So we're told that he'll be meeting with all of the on-duty firefighters today, about 17 or 18 firefighters within the firehouse. He'll be getting a tour. You know, there is a memorial within the firehouse, Wolf. All 15 of the firefighters who were killed on 9/11, their pictures are up in the firehouse, and also plaques remembering them. And we're also told, Wolf, that the firefighters here have prepared lunch for the president. They anticipate sitting down with him. We spoke to two of them earlier this morning, and they said that they would like to thank him for, in their words, a job well done. And one said that he believes this will be a morale booster for Engine 54, Ladder 4. This has certainly been very emotional days since Sunday. A lot of mixed emotions. You know, some of the firefighters saying that they were so relieved that Osama bin Laden had been captured and killed, but saddened when they were reminded of why that mission was, why they had to go and capture Osama bin Laden. And they are always constantly on guard. This is one of the busiest fire stations in New York City. Wolf?
Have you had a chance, Mary, to ask those firefighters how they feel about the president's decision not to release the photo of bin Laden's body?
Didn't get a chance to ask them that. We are told, though, that we will be able to talk with them after the president meets with them. So we certainly want to hear whether or not that is brought up during their conversations with the president.
The president is in New York City getting ready for this emotional, very significant, dramatic moment. Mary, we'll get back to you. CNN's Deborah Farrick is also speaking with a lot of people on Greenwich Street in Lower Manhattan, where crowds are gathering. What's the mood where you are, Deb?
Well, the mood, you know, it's a somber mood still. Many people who are coming, looking at some of the things that have been posted up along the wall on the perimeter of the World Trade Center. We are basically west of the Trade Center site. This is a site clearly that has defined the psyche of so many New Yorkers. Everybody has a story as to where they were on that day, what they were doing, and how it changed them. And, you know, one of the folks I spoke to said, yeah, this is significant, while this is a major blow, it is not the finishing blow. You know, people who got illnesses related to the cleanup of Ground Zero, the first responders, a number of the firefighters and police, you know, they're still living with the effects of this. You talk about the people, others also who are still over in Afghanistan and they're still dying. So there's a sense that this is going on. But for the president today, it is a victorious moment. He's going to come here. He's going to meet with about 50 families. It's going to be a very intimate setting. He's going to be able to talk to them individually, sort of share his thoughts and listen to them. The 9/11 families really, from the very beginning, they have wanted to be listened to because this was such a tragedy to them, to everybody, defining politics globally for the last decade or so. So he will meet with them. He will look at the site. You know, we were down inside the site back on the 9th anniversary. It's being turned into a memorial, a museum, really critical pieces, Wolf, of mementos, for lack of a better word, from that day. But here, people are waiting for his arrival. You can see some of the satellite trucks just behind me there. Those are closer to the actual site, and he will be there. He will be able to lay a wreath. Everybody waiting for his arrival right now, Wolf.
This is the first time he's been back to, as I say, to Ground Zero since he's become president of the United States. This meeting he's going to have with family members, I take it there are not going to be any cameras. It's not going to be live coverage. This is very personal, very private. There may be some still photos released later. Is that your understanding, Deb?
Yeah, that's our understanding. It's really sort of an opportunity for him to meet and say that you know, we keep our promises, that we kept our promises to you, all the families, that no matter how long it took, that we would get Bin Laden. And think about it, Wolf, you know, President Obama being here today, it's going to be a very different picture, a very different feel, something very momentous. The last picture we have of a president down at this site was when George Bush was here, when he was president, days after the attack. He was meeting with the firefighters, he was rallying the first responders, and he was really, you know, sort of rattling the saber. Well, now President Obama is going to be here, and he's going to sort of put that final stamp to say, we got him. Well,
yeah, it's going to be a very emotional moment, and I dare say probably one of the iconic images of his presidency, whether it's a one-term or a two-term presidency. The President of the United States at Ground Zero laying a wreath only a few days after Bin Laden has been killed. This is going to be a very emotional, passionate, dramatic moment that all of us will want to see. And Deb, before I let you go, has anyone at all in New York, and you're based there, you speak to people, including family members, first responders, police, firefighters, has anyone said to you in New York that this is inappropriate, that the president is politically exploiting the death of Bin Laden by coming to New York today?
You know, New Yorkers as a whole are a pretty cynical bunch, but I think there is a deep understanding that this is okay, that this is being done. Yeah, there's going to be a photograph, but with all due respect, it's something that I think most people feel that is right for him to come to meet with the families. Some people would argue, look, he should stay in Washington, but I think there's really a sense that, you know, let him come. Let him at least come to the very spot where all of this began. And if nothing else, there's a sense of closure that, you know, now as we begin to celebrate the ongoing memorials, and as this whole site, the sacred ground where the towers fell, becomes a memorial and a museum and a place for people to come and reflect. It will have a very different tone because, if nothing else, Osama bin Laden has been killed, and now with all the information that we may be getting from the computers and the hard drives and the disks, that there's a sense that, you know, really, it's not over. This part is still a lot more work to be done, but it's going in a very different direction now. Now there's a sense of finality that he's gone.
We're going to come back to you, Deb Farrick, as well. If you get some people over there who want to speak, family members, survivors, first responders, we want to hear from them as well. We're just getting ready. The President of the United States is in New York City. He'll be going to Ground Zero, laying a wreath. He's meeting with firefighters at a fire station. He's going to be meeting with family members, those who survived the nearly 3,000 people who were killed on 9/11. Our continuing coverage of this historic and dramatic moment will continue, but I want to bring in CNN's Anderson Cooper, who's now made his way to Ground Zero. Anderson, you had to go through security. I take it not all that easy on a sensitive day like this.
Yeah, obviously security is very tight, Wolf, understandably so, but it's moving along. They've just opened up the site to reporters and to others who need access to it. We're actually at the memorial location, which is going to be dedicated on September 11th of this year. Behind me also you can see the museum, which is still being built. That's supposed to be open to the public the following year, September 11th of 2012. So there's a lot for the president to see, a lot of changes since the last time he was here. We'll be talking about that a lot throughout the day, Wolf.
All right, Anderson, we're going to be getting back to you. Anderson's going to be anchoring from the site, from Ground Zero in New York. I'm here in Washington. We have a lot to go through. This is one of those days a lot of us will always remember. Our coverage continues right after this.
And I'm Anderson Cooper in New York. Welcome back to CNN Newsroom. I also want to welcome our viewers who are watching on CNN International around the world. Special coverage of President Obama's visit to Ground Zero. During his visit, the president is meeting privately with families of 9/11 victims, and he'll also take part in a wreath-laying ceremony at this spot at the World Trade Center site. My colleague John King from John King USA is here as well. For this president, I mean, it's an important day to try to, in some ways, perhaps mend relationships with some 9/11 families.
Mend relationships with 9/11 families. The word closure has been used a lot in the last week. I don't know that you can ever have closure for what happened at this site on 9/11. I think that's true. But for the President of the United States to come here, very carefully done, not a speech, no public remarks, private meetings with the families, you know, Engine and Ladder Company 10 right over there. Remarkable progress. There have been a lot of delays here, but remarkable progress is late as you see this plate take shape. They were expecting big event here in September for the 10th anniversary. And of course, the killing of bin Laden now brings the President of the United States here today, which the time with the 9/11 families, it will be interesting to talk to them after about their emotions of seeing a president at this site. Very different emotions. Remember, Bush was here just days after 9/11 saying, I hear you, we will get them, we will get them. And George W. Bush, of course, wanted this day and wanted to get bin Laden, and now his successor will be here to celebrate. Might not be the right word because of the solemnity of the site, but just to reflect on the moment.
Yeah, bittersweet day in many ways. President Obama had invited former President Bush, and former President Bush chose not to come.
He chose not to come. He has kept a very, very low profile, and he wants to stay away from any political events. And this is not a political event. This is a national day of reflection, a day of some celebration. Again, it feels like an odd word to use. But the former president simply said that he appreciated the invitation, but he wanted to stick to his low-profile act and didn't feel like it was appropriate for him to be here on this day.
How concerned do you think the White House is about sort of the drip of information? You know, the story has changed about events on the ground. Perhaps some of that is to be expected in the fog of war and the heat of combat. You know, recollections are different. But there obviously has been a history of U.S. military, U.S. officials giving out incorrect information, sometimes purposefully in the case of Pat Tillman, Jessica Lynch. Is the White House concerned about this sort of evolving story?
They are concerned, which is one of the reasons now in the last 24 hours they've become very stingy with any new details. They are getting all the after-action reports. All of the SEALs, all of the support forces, all the CIA operatives have all filed after-action reports now. They've all been debriefed. So the White House now knows a lot more. There's a shame, in a sense, in that they put out this more muscular narrative first, that there was a constant firefight, that, you know, bin Laden perhaps was armed, and perhaps he even fired a few shots. Now we know he was not armed. Perhaps there was an AK-47 in the room, maybe a pistol. But if that at all takes away from the heroism of these SEALs, it's a shame, because now you have the narrative of the White House pulling back a bit. They realized they made a mistake. They got out too soon. They say it was an effort to give us more information for a story we were all thirsty for, every last detail. But in the end, they undermined a bit the sense of now can we believe what they tell us now. And that's a shame, in the sense that this is the commandos who did this operation, the president having the guts to order this operation, and then to have now a debate about, well, are they telling us the truth? Are they trying to hide something? Why did they say it was as muscular as it was at the beginning, when we find out now it was less so? That doesn't mean it wasn't daring. It doesn't mean it wasn't risky. It doesn't mean that these commandos didn't put their life at risk. And so the fact that we're quibbling over the details now, in some ways, takes away from that.
Yeah. For this president, it obviously comes at an important time, but he's really working today to not have this be in any ways anything political about this, or trying to.
That takes care of itself. We have seen an increase in his poll numbers. The White House says, of course, the decision was not political. For 9.5 years, the hunt for bin Laden has been a top priority of the United States, regardless of the name of the president or the political party of the president. There's no doubt, though, that a president benefits when dramatic and events that are viewed as positive happen. So this president benefits from it. We see his handling of terrorism numbers are up. The percentage of Americans who view him as a strong and decisive leader is up. What conversation will we be having a year from now when we're closer to a presidential election? We'll be having a conversation about how Americans feel about the economy. But to the degree that the president is viewed as a stronger commander-in-chief, a more decisive president, of course it helps him politically. That will take care of itself. He doesn't need to talk about that.
And for all the talk among some officials about releasing a photo, it seems as if, from what the president told CBS News yesterday, 60 Minutes, that all along he never intended to release the photo.
He told CBS that his inclination was no. His top aides are saying his inclination was no. The CIA Director Leon Panetta got way out ahead of people, saying it would be released. The question was not if, but when. But I'm told, and I know Ed Henry at the White House is told, and others are told, that Secretaries Clinton at the State Department and Gates at the Defense Department were the most forceful in saying, Mr. President, look around the world. Have there been any major anti-American demonstrations? No. Have there been any initial retaliatory strikes in these first 72 hours? No. Why would you want to release the photo and risk inflaming a situation that so far around the world has gone as well, if not better, than anybody in the national security and intelligence business could have hoped?
We'll be talking with John a lot throughout our coverage. Wolf, you could not have a more glorious day in New York City than this one. A few clouds in the sky, but a blue sky all around, and really just a beautiful day to be down here remembering at Ground Zero, Wolf.
Very appropriate on this very, very special day. Over at Engine 54, the fire station, the president should be arriving with his motorcade, Anderson. Momentarily, you can see the buzz already there. Seeing as Mary Snow is over at Engine 54. Set the scene a little bit for us, Mary, because the president will be going inside, meeting with firefighters.
Yeah, and Wolf, as you just mentioned, a beautiful day here. American flag flying above Engine 54, Ladder 4. Security is extremely tight. The street has been blocked off around this firehouse. And just a few moments ago, we even heard a police officer coming over with a bullhorn telling people who are living in this area to close their windows. Some people have gathered behind barricades waiting for the president's arrival. And once he is inside, we're told that he's going to be meeting with about 17 or 18 firefighters. These are the firefighters who were on duty today, and he'll be in there. We're told that the firefighters have also cooked lunch for him and plan to sit down and eat with him. He may make some remarks. We may hear from him once he's inside. And this is his first step in New York City. You may have heard that bullhorn, the police again telling people staying in a hotel room to close their windows as they anticipate the president's arrival here.
Yeah, you can see security obviously is very, very tight for the president of the United States in this very, very sensitive part of lower Manhattan. I'm told, Mary, and the remarks the president will make at some point, probably inside this fire station firehouse will be rather informal. It's not going to be like a major political type speech or anything like that. He's going to just have some remarks. Is that what you're hearing over there?
That's what we are anticipating, that they would be informal remarks if the president does speak, to the press inside the firehouse. There'll be a pool camera in there with him. But yeah, definitely the tone here is that it's going to be a very informal setting, that he'll be taking a tour also of this firehouse and see the memorials that are inside the firehouse, the memorials to the 15 men who were killed on September 11th.
All heroes indeed. Yeah. All right, Mary, stand by because we're going to obviously want to see the president's motorcade arrive. We're going to want to see him go inside. We'll have coverage, of course, for our viewers on that. David Gergen is joining us, our senior political analyst. David, you worked for 4 American presidents. The tone that President Obama sets today on this, a few days after bin Laden has been killed, is very, very important because you don't want to be overtly political on such a sensitive day.
And not overtly celebratory either. And so what I think the wreath laying is meant to convey very much a sense of dignity and honor that the president, it's a quieter ceremony than perhaps we would have expected. We all remember, Wolf, how George W. Bush went there just after 9/11 and famously was so defiant. And when people yelled at him, we can't hear you, Mr. President, of firemen and policemen, he yelled back, yeah, but I can hear you, and so can all of America. And that was a moment in which we had to rally people and sort of come together and fight this terrorism. And now President Obama comes a decade later, after a decade of war, to the most important shrine we have to the beginning of this war. In 9/11, this site is almost like to America now what Pearl Harbor is to our national memories.
That's a good point. David, stand by for a moment. Anderson Cooper is there at Ground Zero awaiting the president. Anderson, this is a day, I was saying earlier, that a lot of folks will always remember, but it's certainly one this president of the United States will always remember.
Yeah, and obviously he felt it was important to be here and come and meet with the families. John King is with me now. John, you're getting information about who met the president when he arrived here in New York.
Just looking at the pool report filed by the group of reporters who are with the president as he travels, and they brought Marine One, the president's helicopter, to the Wall Street landing zone, which is very close to here. And Rudy, you can see motorcycles in the motorcade now approaching. We are told the President Obama arriving at the site. Rudy Giuliani, the mayor of New York City at that time, man who was on these grounds so often that day and in the days after, met the president. That's a sign of the sort of bipartisan American spirit today.
Mayor Giuliani meeting President Obama on the tarmac. Mary Snow is in the crowd. Mary, are there a lot of people there to see the president?
There are, Anderson, and we're just seeing the motorcade pull up, and you can hear the cheer of the crowd behind me. You know, there's so many tourists in this area, and there's been so much anticipation. The motorcades right now pulling up to the doors
Let's listen in, Mary.
Crowds.
Let's listen in to see if we can hear anything.
They're waiting to allow them to get out. The doors are opening. They're waiting for the president to arrive here to meet with the firefighters. Whom I'm being told they're very appreciative of this visit. In fact, the president is coming all the way here to meet with them on this day. The doors are open. People are moving. And here's the president. He's now waving to the crowd out here. As he heads into the door, the president now meeting with the firefighters here at Engine 54, Ladder 4, making his way inside. Steve Sanders.
The firehouse knows very well the pain of 9/11. They lost 15 men on 9/11. Engine 54, Ladder 4, Battalion 9 on 48th Street on 8th Avenue in New York. So, Mary, now the president how much time is he going to be spending inside, and what's he going to be doing?
We're told he'll be in there for about 45 minutes, and he's going to be meeting with about 17 or 18 firefighters, the firemen who are on duty today. We're told that they are going to be taking him on a tour. There's a memorial in there dedicated to the 15 men who were killed on September 11th. And we're also told he'll be chatting with them, talking with them. We're also told that they have also made lunch for him. You know, firemen have a reputation for being such good cooks, and they've been working on that this morning. We did talk to 2 firefighters earlier this morning, Anderson, I said, you know, what do you want to tell them? What's the message? And they both said, you know, we want to say thank you, in their words, for a job well done. You might see these sanitation trucks now blocking the view, and we were told by the NYPD earlier that once the president was inside, that these trucks were going to be pulled up. This is a security measure as part of securing the block around this fire station in the heart of Times Square.
Mary, thanks very much. Wolf, a full day for the president here, and we'll be covering every step of the way, Wolf.
You know, it's interesting, Anderson, and I think I wanted maybe John to weigh in as well. Mary, I don't know if you had a good view of the president and his limousine arriving there. We saw Valerie Jarrett walking in behind the president's senior aide. But I think I saw Rudy Giuliani emerge from the president's limo as well. John, you had heard that Rudy Giuliani was there to welcome the president into Lower Manhattan. Did we know he was going to drive to the firehouse with the president of the United States?
We have not seen that level of detail in the schedule, but Mayor Giuliani, who, Wolf, as you remember, became known as America's mayor in those days after 9/11, walked this site that day, was here so often in the days after, became a key national figure of unity and resolve just after 9/11, has also given the President of the United States, a Democrat, remember Rudy Giuliani is a Republican, has given the President of the United States a lot of credit in recent days. And so it is a sign of how this is viewed as a day of healing and reflection for this city, remembrance for this city. This is not a political day, and you know, credit to Mayor Giuliani for being there to greet the president, for being at his side today, especially among the first responders. Mayor Giuliani is still a very popular figure in this city.
Very popular indeed. The former president, George W. Bush, declined the invitation. The former President Bill Clinton declined. Rudy Giuliani did not decline. It's very appropriate. The former mayor of New York, who was there on 9/11, and all of us remember what he did. All right, guys, everyone stand by, because the president is now inside this firehouse. We're going to have continuing coverage, all building up to that moment not too far down the road when he will go to Ground Zero. That's where Anderson is, where John is, and he will lay a wreath remembering the nearly 3,000 people who died on 9/11. Our special coverage will continue from the CNN newsroom right after this. Elaborate a little bit, if you don't mind, Anderson. The construction, the other night I was watching AC 360. We heard a lot of noise. Construction is really moving. Is it moving around the clock there where you are?
Yeah, that's one of the really interesting things. It is literally around the clock. We were on the air at 10 o'clock at night, and there are jackhammers all over in different locations going, and they took a break at 11 and then started up again. So this is a 24-hour operation. You know, for years there were a lot of competing interests, a lot of argument about what would be built, over the designs of what would be built, a lot of discussions with family members, understandably, the man who owns the site, the developer who holds the lease, the Port Authority, and others. All those discussions have now been sorted out, and you really see construction going full tilt. The area that we're on right now is actually the memorial area, which is going to be dedicated in just a few months on September 11th of this year. Behind me, you can see the still being built museum, which will be opened, if it makes it on schedule, the following September 11th. There's also a number of towers. It used to be what was at one point called the Freedom Tower. That's no longer called the Freedom Tower, but that's well under construction. One tower has already been opened, and 3 other towers are still being constructed. And there's also reflecting pools in the footprint, if you will, of the former World Trade Tower. So a lot going on. We're going to show you more of it throughout the morning as our coverage continues. We'll be right back.
Buildings destroyed, of course, on 9/11. He's expected to meet relatives of some of those who died after the ceremony. We'll have live coverage of that for you here on the Hub in about 2 hours' time. That's at 17:25 GMT. We'll be live with our correspondent there a little later here on the Hub.
And there are some people who have been gathered to wait for him to come out. So a faint cheer going up. Not a lot of people out here gathered outside, but his motorcade is now just pulled away down the street. And it's about 45 minutes, Anderson, that he was inside the firehouse and now headed to his next location. As you know, he did speak informal remarks telling these firefighters inside Engine 54, Ladder 4 is a symbolic site of the extraordinary sacrifice that was made on that terrible day almost 10 years ago. 15 members of that firehouse killed on September 11th, and between them, they had 28 children among the firefighters, and these families still remain very close. After Osama bin Laden had been killed, in fact, they said that they were on the phone for a good part of the day on Monday, calling these families, checking in with them. It's been a lot of mixed emotions for these men here.
Yeah, well, I know there's also inside that firehouse, there's a plaque for the 15 men that I know that President Obama was shown. There's also an area in that firehouse where not just the photos of the firefighters who have passed, but also notes from their children. As Mary mentioned, 28 children have been left without fathers in that one firehouse alone. I'm joined now at Ground Zero here with John King of John King USA. The president is on his way back down here now to lay the wreath. We're not sure if former Mayor Giuliani will continue to stay with him, but we assume he will.
We assume he will. I think that's a great sign of unity, a sign of a president who now was the president of the United States when this momentous event happened, the killing of Osama bin Laden, side by side with the mayor who represented the country as such a great city and national leader and a unifying and a figure of great resolve after 9/11. I think that's a good image for the country. It's an interesting time, 9.5 frustrating, fitful, sometimes awful years and frustrating years in the search for Osama bin Laden. And so there's a sense here, I think, and you feel it, you've been here broadcasting live the last few days, when you talk to the family members, some of them do have that sense of finally, but for others have said, you know, this is reopening the wounds a bit.
Yeah.
It reopens the wounds a bit. I had a woman on the other night who was in one of these towers who said, he tried to kill me. And just the way she personalized it, and the way she said it, it's just stopped me in my tracks. So it's an important moment. I think the wreath laying, the way the president is doing it without any formal speech is important, just to reflect and to meet with the families. And as Ed noted, there's been some tensions with the families from time to time, so that's an important moment for the president.
Do we know where the meeting with the families will take place?
No, I don't know the exact location. We do know that they're, of course, invited to the wreath-laying ceremony, which will be right over here. And in the past, there are other buildings around here where I know that President Bush has been here in the past and has done those kind of meetings. Exactly where, I don't know. And when the White House...
Cameras will not be present.
Cameras will not be present at that. And one of the things I just mentioned quickly as an aside is when you look around here, and we don't want to show it, I covered the White House for 8.5 years. There is an extraordinary and extra extraordinary level of security around this site right now. Yeah. Obviously, you have the President of the United States out in a public place that has not once but twice been the scene of a terrorist attack in this country, an important public event for the president. But when you look around here, you can tell that they're being extra careful.
Yeah. Let's go back to Wolf in Washington. A lot to cover. We anticipate the president's arrival. Well, very shortly, actually. Here we'll be bringing to you every step of the way, Wolf.
Yeah, there's no doubt that the president, this is the first time the president will be at Ground Zero since he was elected president of the United States. And he picked these days, and let's just remind our viewers here in the United States and around the world, why? Because over the weekend, U.S. Navy SEALs went to Abbottabad, Pakistan. They found Osama bin Laden, and they killed him. And that ended, to a certain degree, a major chapter, the hunt for the world's most wanted terrorist. Took almost 10 years. Now, on the 10th anniversary of 9/11, that's coming up, there will be a very different tone because bin Laden is now dead. We're going to go back to Ground Zero momentarily. As soon as the president shows up there, he will lay a wreath at the memorial. He'll later, as you know, meet with some of the family members, the surviving family members. Our special coverage will continue right after this.
Moments ago, President Obama left Engine 54, Ladder 4 after meeting with firefighters. He made some short comments inside the firehouse. They weren't broadcast live. They were put on tape. We've just got them the tape, and we're going to play that for you now.
But to the commissioner, to Mayor Giuliani, who obviously performed heroic acts almost 10 years ago, but most of all to all of you, I wanted to just come up here to thank you. This is a symbolic site of the extraordinary sacrifice that was made on that terrible day almost 10 years ago. Obviously, we can't bring back the friends that were lost. And I know that each and every one of you not only grieve for them, but have also over the last 10 years dealt with their family, their children, trying to give them comfort, trying to give them support. Well, what happened on Sunday, because of the courage of our military and the outstanding work of our intelligence, sent a message around the world, but also sent a message here back home that when we say we will never forget, we mean what we say. And our commitment to making sure that justice was done is something that transcended politics, transcended party. It didn't matter which administration was in, it didn't matter who was in charge. We were going to make sure that the perpetrators of that horrible act, that they receive justice. So, you know, it's some comfort, I hope, to all of you to know that when those guys took those extraordinary risks going into Pakistan, that they were doing it in part because of the sacrifices that were made in this state. They were doing it in the name of your brothers that were lost. And finally, let me just say that although 9/11 obviously was a high watermark of courage for the New York Fire Department and a symbol of the sacrifice, you guys are making sacrifices every single day. It doesn't get as much notoriety, it doesn't get as much attention, but every time you run into a burning building, every time that you are saving lives, you're making a difference, and that's part of what makes this city great, and that's part of what makes this country great. So I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart and on behalf of the American people for the sacrifices that you make every single day. And I just want to let you know that you're always going to have a president and an administration who's got your back the way you've gotten the backs of the people of New York over these last many years. So God bless you. God bless the United States of America. And with that, I'm going to try some of that food. All right? Appreciate you guys. Thank you.
Firefighters are speaking right now outside the firehouse. Let's listen in.
Are you ready? Okay. Hold on. All right, so
have a minute heads up. Okay.
The president was nice enough to come to our firehouse today, Engine 54, Ladder 4, Battalion 9, to share lunch with the firefighters. It was a wonderful gesture based on the news that we all got Sunday night about Osama bin Laden's death. I think the president connected well with the firefighters. He gave a little congratulations and thank you to the firefighters for what the firefighters and first responders did on September 11th and what the firefighters and first responders continue to do. He seemed generally very appreciative of what all the first responders do, and he really wanted to convey that message to the first responder community. After we had a little greeting with the president, the 15 firefighters from the firehouse sat down and had lunch with President Obama. It was a wonderful lunch. It was a very informal lunch. The president was very much at ease, but still wanted everybody to know again how much he appreciated all the work that the first responders and firefighters do for him. So there was a little bantering back and forth. We had a very light, enjoyable conversation. At the same time, we're still remembering everything that's going on, all the sacrifices that the military is making for us now, all the sacrifices that the families made on September 11th and continue to make in Afghanistan and Iraq. So with all that in mind, we had a great conversation, a little bit of Mets, a little bit of Yankees, a little bit of White Sox, a little bit of Cubs, and we think the president generally enjoyed his visit to the firehouse. Again, we're extremely appreciative that he was able to join us today for lunch.
Chief, how meaningful is it for you, sir? How meaningful was this visit when he saw that shrine?
I think this firehouse symbolizes the sacrifices that were made by the firefighters and first responders in New York City. I think the world knows that to some degree. So for him to come here and to see the faces of the firefighters that were killed on September 11th and to see the shrine that was erected in their honor really meant something to him. I could see that the president was clearly touched by the sacrifices and by the stories that the firefighters told him.
Chief, during the launch, how were the manners? Were you ever worried about how they behaved in such a formal setting?
I think the president put everybody at ease as soon as he walked in the door. He was a wonderful guest. The folks that were with him were wonderful. Mayor Giuliani came with him. Obviously, we have a relationship with Mayor Giuliani, so that was a nice icebreaker as well. And the firefighters were complete ease with the president. He put everybody at ease right away.
Any surprises? Were you expecting him to be here this long?
We knew that he'd be here for a period of time, but to see him take off his coat, sit down in the kitchen, sit back in the chair, relax, and just have a nice conversation was wonderful.
Chef Joe C., can you talk to us for a second? What was it like to break bread and have the President of the United States eat your eggplant parmesan?
It was, you know, once in a lifetime thing, I guess, you know. It's pretty cool. He was a great guy, you know.
What did he say to you?
He just, he loved the shrimp, he loved the veal, the eggplant parmesan. He was really down-to-earth guy. He sat down, like the chief said. Everything was formal. We were just, you know, just like hanging out with the rest of the guys in the firehouse.
Yeah, usually the brothers have to pay for their own meals.
He looked like he liked everything. He seemed like he liked everything, you know?
Sir, did you have anything that you wanted to say to him? This firehouse has suffered a lot.
No, we thank him just for the recognition. Coming by was really a spectacular thing. He came genuinely. He thanked us all. We just wanted to tell him we thank him for what he did on Sunday and all the troops and all. We want to let them know that we're with them, you know, every step of the way. And God bless them, thank them. I mean, if it wasn't for them, you know, we'd still be chasing this guy. You know?
Is the burden a little easier?
Yeah, it's bittersweet. You know, a lot of emotions come up, but you know.
What was your
thank
favorite
God.
moment?
This whole thing is great. It's just great.
Usually the firefighters have to pay for their own meals. Does this mean you guys actually took the president to lunch today?
That's right, and we were all invited to the White House for lunch.
Did he say that he extended an invitation?
No, that's just kidding.
Were you on duty on 9/11? Your full name?
Joe Cerebolo.
Firefighter?
Yeah, firefighter.
Joe, and are you going back to
CER,
Joe,
what did the president say about not forgetting? Some of these right here.
Did he?
Well, the president said
As far as not forgetting, the president made it very clear that the firefighters, first responders have the administration support. They won't forget us. They know the job we're doing day in, day out. There was a lot of links to the job the military are doing day in, day out. So he made it very clear that he supports and his administration supports the firefighters.
Ed, did you feel it was a long time coming for the president to come and say such remarks to firefighters in the city?
I think the administration has always demonstrated support for firefighters. I think because of the week's events, I think it was very appropriate for him to come. And listen, they picked the site, they picked the visit. We didn't, they decided this is the appropriate thing to do down in the White House, and they pulled it off and did it.
Chief, even with the killing of Osama bin Laden, this house and this city and the country faces threats. This was the first house to respond to the Times Square bomber van. What are your thoughts today going forward, even though we've had the killing of Osama bin Laden, but what first responders like you and those across the country still face?
The reason that that the first responders, the firefighters, and the police officers were able to figure out what was going on Times Square was because of the preparedness and training that's been ongoing since September 11th. We're not going to stop that. We're going to continue all of our training, all of our preparedness. We'll continue to maintain a relationship with Homeland Security, and we'll just keep our heads up and our eyes open for anything going on. That won't stop, and just as the military is doing their role overseas, we're going to do our role here right in town.
Did he say anything about the attack on Osama bin Laden with you all?
He did talk about it, and he talked a little bit about what things were like in their strategy room there, but I think it was somewhat confidential, and he just said that it was a tense moment for everybody in that room. You know, there was some very tense moments as far as the helicopter situation was, but he was very relieved and very happy, as well as his administration, that everything worked out.
From your point of view, it was 10 years from the promise made on the pile to the fulfillment of that promise this past week, this past Monday. I mean, what did that feel like, finally seeing the promise fulfilled?
I think we have to thank President Bush and President Obama for sticking it out, for always staying focused. I know that President Obama said we're going to get him. Took a long time, took a lot of preparation, but they got him. So I think that 10 years, 1 year, 2 year, 10 years, it's done. I think it's wonderful that it's done before the 10th anniversary, so maybe the families might be slightly relieved leading up to the 10th anniversary, but it's important. It's done, and now everybody's got a job to move forward.
Is the burden a little lighter today?
President Bush on this?
The burden for the families, I believe, from the families that I've talked to, is a little bit lighter. Justice is probably the correct word, certainly not closure. So I think the burden is a little bit lighter, but this is an ongoing thing, and we've got almost 3,000 families with a hole in their heart. So we can never say that justice and comfort is completely there.
What did the firehouse go through on 9/11?
The president, and how it made you feel to hear the word thanks on behalf of the entire department that lost so much that day?
I don't think the president could have been clearer or more sincere with what he said, which was most pleasing to us. He was as clear as he could be and as pleasant as could be over it. I think that...
All right, so I just want to break away briefly. The president has just arrived at the first precinct in Lower Manhattan, NYPD. There he is on the screen. You see him walking inside. He's going to meet with New York City police officers, meet with Port Authority officers as well. You saw Rudy Giuliani still with the president, joining him on this very special day. The president first visiting the fire station, the firehouse, now going to the Lower Manhattan First Precinct for NYPD. He wants to pay his respects to all of those first responders, the firefighters, the police officers, the Port Authority workers, others who were so involved in saving lives as best as they could almost 10 years ago on 9/11. Very emotional comments from the fire chief, Edward Kilduff, in New York. Anderson Cooper is down at Ground Zero. He's watching all of this together with us. Anderson, this for the firefighters in New York, for the police officers, the first responders, having the President of the United States come to New York only a few days after bin Laden was killed has to be such an emotional moment.
Absolutely, and we saw the president, we now have the video of the president looking at the plaques that they have. And I mean, just think about this, 15 firefighters from that one station died. That's an extraordinary number. And the plaques line a wall there that the president took time to look and read the names. Also, it's not just 15 firefighters. They left behind 28 children. And those firefighters who are now serving out there continue to obviously to have a relationship with those children and with the family members of the firefighters who've lost. I'm joined now by John King from John King USA. I mean, a lot of people don't understand that the New York City Fire Department is a very close-knit group, and with, I mean, I just had talked to Lee Ielpi. His son was killed here. He was a firefighter, and now his other son is also a firefighter.
It is a family. It goes through the generations. In the Midwest, maybe you work in the auto factories, and NYPD, NYFD, there's generations of it, fathers, sons, and grandfathers, and so this was a family wound. And to tell you, you know, there was uplifting to hear the the chief and the other firefighters talk about how nice it was to have the president in there. But at the same time, I just felt my mood going back down, because it's a reminder when you hear them speak, just the cold-blooded murder that happened on that day. And, you know, behind, you were mentioning this earlier, this will be filled in pretty soon, and the names will be etched in those stones in the reflecting pool here, and it has sort of a Vietnam memorial look to it, the dark stones and the like. And you begin to realize when you hear the first responders and you're reminded of their stories and all the pain of why this needs to be a solemn day. That yes, there are people out there, you know, saying thank you after 9.5 years, but at the same time, when you continue the story and you hear the personal stories, it brings you down.
Yeah, Lee Ielpe's son, John, who died here, was a firefighter from Rescue 2. Everybody from Rescue 2 who responded, who came to this site, perished here. It was just an extraordinary loss.
And if, hopefully this event and people watching, you know, we're a society that tends to want to move on, that tends to want to forget the hard stuff. Remembering the heroes of 9/11, the victims who were killed in cold blood trying to do their jobs, and then the heroes who came in. If that is part of what we discuss now as we also talk about the mission and the bravery of the commandos, it's good for the country to remember the heroism that happened in this city, around the Pentagon, and elsewhere on that day.
And there is new life blossoming here at Ground Zero. They've planted trees in the memorial area, which is going to be dedicated in just a few months on September 11th. And about 100 feet from where we're standing right now is where President Obama is going to be laying a wreath. There's what they call the survivor tree, or the surviving tree. It's a pear tree that was on this site on 9/11, was damaged but taken to another location, nursed back to health, and has been brought back to Ground Zero for planting. Just a remarkable testament to the changes that we have seen on this site, and to the new life that's going to be born here as well. And that's where President Obama was going to be laying the wreath shortly. All of that, of course, we'll bring to you live. We'll be right back.
The president is now inside the first precinct in Lower Manhattan. You're looking at those live pictures there. He's meeting with the police officers, New York Port Authority officers as well. Earlier, he met with firefighters in Midtown Manhattan. Anderson Cooper is on the scene for us at Ground Zero. Anderson, from this first precinct, we believe he will head over to where you are for this wreath-laying ceremony.
Yeah, that's right. And the significance, just so you know, the first precinct is they were the first police officers to respond on 9/11. They did not lose any members of the police force from that precinct. Though one of their members was trapped, but he survived. But they were the first to respond to the scene. President Obama, as you said, Wolf, is scheduled to lay a wreath here at the Ground Zero Memorial Site about an hour from now. He's been at the New York Fire Station meeting with emergency workers, as you mentioned, who rushed to the scene after the 9/11 terrorist attacks. He was at a firehouse where 15 brave firefighters were lost. We're joined now by one first responder on 9/11. His name is Kenny Specht. He's a retired firefighter, president of the New York City Firefighter Brotherhood Foundation. Kenny, I appreciate you being with us. When you heard that bin Laden was dead, what went through your mind when you heard he'd been killed?
Well, yeah, I've been listening to a little bit of your show today, and I have to be honest with you that the American resolve to complete the task, we're not going to stop until the task is completed. It took almost 10 years, but it just goes to show the resolve of this country, and the resolve of the military, and honestly, Anderson, the resolve of the American people. Did it take a long time? Absolutely, but I have to be honest with you, it's better late than never. So the first thing that crossed my mind, and I spoke to Wolf the other night about this, was first and foremost, Anderson, I was absolutely pleased to hear that not a single member of the military, the United States Navy SEAL team, was even injured. And to me, that was paramount. And then second to that was the fact that Osama bin Laden was dead. So it was really excellent news, to be honest with you.
You know, some people use this word closure, and it's a word I never really try to use because I don't think there is closure for people who've suffered a tragedy like this. When you hear that word, I mean, do you feel closure?
No. Anderson, I have to be honest with you. 10 years outside the Trade Center, the New York City Fire Department is still dealing with the repercussions of our actions down here. New York City Fire Department members are dying from illness and injury at a rate that's higher than the national average. Closure for the New York City Fire Department, I don't know if it's ever going to happen. And the same thing with the construction workers in the New York City Police Department and the people that spend a considerable amount of time on this pile, this toxic pile. The death of Osama bin Laden doesn't bring closure to those that are still dealing with the illness and injury. And like I said just a second ago, Anderson, 10 years later, our ranks is still being decimated by serious illness and injury. So closure's a difficult thing to get. I'm glad and I'm happy to see what's going on here today. It's important that the country celebrates what occurred. But it's also vitally important, Anderson, that we remain vigilant, we remain on our game, and we realize that, unfortunately, this war against terrorism doesn't end with the death of Osama bin Laden.
And I know that's why you started the Brotherhood Foundation. You yourself have cancer from the site, isn't that correct?
That's correct, Anderson.
What do you want? What do you hope to achieve with the foundation?
Well, we've been open for 3 years this summer. We were on the forefront of the fight to get the James Adroga bill passed, which fortunately for members of the fire department and the police department and those affected was passed right before almost the last day, Anderson, for lack of a better term. We all saw what happened late December, getting this bill pushed and getting the work done. The bill was passed. That was something that was vitally important to us at the foundation. And now we continue the work of assisting ill and injured New York City firefighters when they have nowhere else to turn. I found it important that they turn to somebody who knew what they were going through, somebody who knew what it was to be afflicted at a young age with a serious illness or injury. And the New York City Fire Department, Anderson, it's all about brotherhood. And I heard Wolf and you speak about it earlier. We are a tight, close-knit community. Sometimes a New York City firefighter will only call on another New York City firefighter to assist them. That's what I wanted to do. I wanted to be somebody that they can go to, ask for help and get help. Sometimes we're embarrassed, sometimes we're afraid, and sometimes the only one we can turn to is another New York City firefighter. So yes, we are a close-knit community, but we always take care of our own. Always. We make sure, to the best of our ability, that when we roll out the door, out of a firehouse in the city of New York, that we come back the same way we left, together. Everybody goes home to their families, and the brotherhood remains still to this day as strong as it was 10 years ago.
Well said. Kenny, appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much, Anderson. Have a great day.
Wolf, there really is, well, there's no place like New York, and there's no folks like the New York City firefighters in this great city of ours, Wolf.
I know, and you're a New Yorker, Anderson. You can really appreciate it. I know a lot of New Yorkers. They love the firefighters in New York. These last 10 years, nearly 10 years, has done wonders. The respect, the appreciation, the heroism that they show is something all of us appreciate, not only firefighters in New York, I must say, but indeed all over the country, all over the world. They risk their lives for all of us, so we deeply appreciate it. The president's on his way over to Ground Zero right now, to the memorial. He'll lay a wreath at the survivor tree, what's called. We just saw that wreath come out. The president will be there. It will be an emotional, moving ceremony. There's the wreath right there. They're getting ready for the president of the United States. He just met with police officers, earlier with firefighters. Much more of our special coverage coming up.
And welcome back to Ground Zero. The president's motorcade has arrived here at Ground Zero. Ed Henry joins us now. Ed, what are we hearing? You're getting some new details about what went on inside Precinct 1.
That's right. It was a brief visit for the president. He was sort of laying out a lot of what he had said at the fire department visit, saying, look, when we say we never forget, we mean it. And he noted as well that he has now spoken to some members of the military team that were able to kill Osama bin Laden. And the president noted that these first responders had a role in all of this, and that it was not just about the military team. That brought some applause from the police officers there. When the president's motorcade came not far far from where we are. He has now just arrived here at Ground Zero. There was a cheer that came out from the streets as well. A lot of people gathered here. And I note that one of the firefighters they met with earlier, the fire chief, said earlier the president really connected with those firefighters. What's significant about that is this White House got pretty annoyed with the media after the oil spill in the Gulf, all the questions about whether the president emotes enough, whether he connects with people. But in big moments like this, there is an expectation that the president is going to rise to the occasion and maybe capture that moment for the American people. The president did that after the tragedy in Tucson, even had some Republicans saying that was a fabulous speech at that memorial service. Other times he has maybe not met that. This is another opportunity for him, just as George W. Bush did here at Ground Zero after 9/11, just as Bill Clinton did after the Oklahoma City bombing. It's a very, very important moment for this President, Anderson.
And just for our viewers who are just now joining us on CNN Newsroom and watching on CNN International around the world, explain what's going to transpire over the next hour or so.
Now, the president is going to be laying a wreath, and we're expecting that he will not make any public comments. That is just in remembrance of so many who died here on 9/11. And then he is going to go behind closed doors and for about an hour meet with about 10 families, we think, of victims who were lost on 9/11. And that's all going to be private, shut off to television cameras. And they realize inside the White House, when you talk to senior officials, that they are walking a very fine line here. They don't want to look like they're exploiting what happened on Sunday night when Osama bin Laden was killed. They don't want to look like they're politicizing it. We have an election coming up, obviously. As I was walking up to Ground Zero, there are people selling Obama T-shirts and Obama buttons on the street saying Obama got Osama. They don't want to get caught up in that, obviously. They want to try to capture the emotion of this moment, but they want to make sure that when they're dealing with families who, as the president just noted at this police department when he made that stop, there are a lot of children who are now almost 10 years older, who have grown up without parents because of 9/11. The last thing you want to do is look like you're politicizing it, Anderson.
Yeah, and of course, Ed, we continue to follow this as we watch the preparations underway. Firefighters have been assembled, police officers, everybody waiting for President Obama. We'll, of course, bring that to you live as it's happening. I want to bring in Erin Fisher. She's just one of the many people who suffered a great loss on 9/11. She's the oldest of 7 kids in a family that lost their dad on that day. He was working in the Port Authority's operational control room. Erin joins us now from our bureau here in New York. Erin, as you see the pictures, as we await the president, what would you like to say to the president today?
I'd like to say that I appreciate his efforts, even though, you know, it's been a difficult journey for all of us. I think that it will go a long way, I really hope.
When you heard the news about bin Laden being killed, was it mixed emotions? Was there a single emotion? What through your mind?
I didn't really have a lot going through my mind, actually. I think that for some people who considered Osama bin Laden as the symbol of terrorism, it might have brought some closure to their lives. But as far as mine went, you know, I worked really hard trying to find closure in my own way. And so for me, it was more of a government's journey to try and close that chapter.
Erin, I just want to alert our viewers. Let's just watch now as the president greets members of the fire department, from the Port Authority, also from the New York City Police Department. Joined now by Wolf Blitzer as well, and John King. As we watch this, we'll the president will also be laying that wreath. Let's listen in.
They are?
Stay down, please. Thank you, guys. Thanks.
So the President of the United States, he's meeting with some politicians. You saw the Governor, Andrew Cuomo, Mayor Giuliani, former mayor was there. You see members of the Congress, Senator Kirsten Gillibrand, who just gave her a little kiss from New York, members of the New York delegation. The mayor of New York, Michael Bloomberg, is there. The governor of New Jersey, Chris Christie, is there, in addition to the governor of New York, Andrew Cuomo. Anderson, it was a very, very emotional moment when the president laid this wreath outside what's called the survivor tree, and you could see when they paused, he closed his eyes, and like all of us, brought back a lot of memories.
Yeah, it certainly did. We saw some young people there. Assume they were the family members of people who were lost at Ground Zero. There was also obviously representatives of the New York City Fire Department, the Port Authority, which suffered great losses as well, and the New York City Police Department. It's likely now the president will shortly go in to meet privately with family members. We're told he's going to spend about an hour meeting with them. I'm also here with John King from John King's USA. This is the kind of event we have often seen presidents at, and for this president in particular, it's an important day.
The private event now with the families after the wreath laying is probably the most important part of the day. The president's chance to share his thoughts with them and to hear from them. As Ann Henry noted earlier, there's been some frustration from the families with this administration from time to time. The seemingly support for the cultural center and mosque near this site, the open support early on for having the trials in New York, that caused some tension. region. So it's a chance for the president to reflect with the families on this day. Publicly, what we just saw, the Democratic governor of New York, the Republican governor of New Jersey, this very much, the mood, on the spirit, on the grounds here, very much reflective of how the country came together after 9/11. I'm not sure what we call this day. It's a day of remembrance. Bin Laden was such a singular figure. The death of Bin Laden is not the death of global terrorism, but he was such a singular figure, the face of the horror of what happened that day, that it's a very fitting event. And the mood, the fact that we're saying little, I think, is very appropriate, because just the mood of this is to just have everybody stop, pause, and reflect. And now the president will spend an hour or so with those families, and it'll be interesting to hear from them after.
Former Mayor Rudy Giuliani has also been with President Obama throughout this day. We're also joined by Aaron Fisher, whose dad was killed on 9/11. Aaron, as you watched the president lay that wreath, I'm just wondering what was going through your mind?
I thought that it was a really respectful way to somberly acknowledge the lives that have been lost.
And obviously, your dad worked for the Port Authority. To have representatives of the Port Authority there is an important part of this day.
Yeah, and I kind of feel like I'm there too.
We're also joined by Wolf Blitzer. Wolf, you've got a special guest as well.
A very special guest indeed, Anderson. Captain Tom Vendito. He's with Engine 54, Ladder 4, Battalion 9. That's the firehouse that the president visited about an hour or so ago. He met with the firefighters, had lunch with them. Captain, thank you very much for being with us. We know that 15 firefighters from Engine 54, Ladder 4, Battalion 9 were killed on 9/11. Set the scene inside. How did that session with the president today go?
The session went really well. I was really glad when the president came. He spoke about us as firefighters and acknowledged the work that we do. He spoke about the families and the great sacrifices that the families of our lost members, that is, and the great sacrifices that they made. And he even spoke about their children who, to this day, still live with these great losses. So he was really good, very friendly, very easygoing, and very personable.
Remind our viewers, Captain, what happened nearly 10 years ago on that day, September 11th, when word reached your firehouse that there was a problem down at the World Trade Center.
Well, as you know, all the firefighters that were on duty that day had responded to the World Trade Center, including the chief and his driver. So all the firefighters that were on duty, including the chief, were on they were out of the firehouse at the World Trade Center. So they were the first ones to know what was going on down there. The rest of us, as firefighters, were on off tours. We were home with our families for the most part.
And then a lot of the off-duty firefighters, they simply rushed down there even though they weren't on duty because they knew there was an emergency going on.
That's correct. As firefighters, was something called recall. So we all knew instinctively that our place was at New York City, at our job, and when the emergency unfolded, largely on the news, we all got in our cars and came to work.
Do you know, Captain, if the 15 firefighters from your firehouse who were killed, were they on duty that day, or did they just rush in even though they weren't on duty?
No, all the firefighters in my firehouse were on duty that day. Half of them were due to get off in about 10 minutes, and they chose to respawn, and they went on the box anyway. So yes, everyone was on duty that day, doing their job.
How important is it to you, Captain, that Osama bin Laden is now dead?
Well, it's not so much that bin Laden is dead. What's important to me is that justice was done. 10 years ago, a crime was committed. We were attacked by terrorists, and there was large suffering and a lot of deaths in this nation. We lost a lot of firefighters, civilians alike. It was important that the United States show that you can't commit a crime to our country like that and get away with it. So I'm really happy that justice was done. Not necessarily that we got Osama, but that he has stopped his activities. That's what's important to us, and important to the families who had suffered such great losses that day.
So when you heard the president say at your firehouse, "We will never forget We mean exactly what we say. Justice will be done. That's precisely what you wanted to hear from the Commander-in-Chief.
Yes, sir, that's exactly what we want to hear. As firefighters, we're mostly concerned that people remember the sacrifice that we had made, our brothers had made, and remember their families who endure today with their losses every day, with the loss of those members. There are children that have no fathers, parents that lost sons and wives that lost their husbands, and they live with these losses each and every day. So we're really happy that President Obama acknowledged that and spoke plainly about it, and he was very emotional about it as well.
Did you have a chance to personally speak with the President, Captain?
I just answered a couple of simple questions that he asked.
Can you share with us what he asked?
No big deal. Boy, oh boy, what did he ask me? He asked us about the nature of our work. This firehouse, we do about 5,000 runs for each company, and he asked us basically why that was, and I was explaining to him that, that there's a large population center, and it's a diverse neighborhood, and so on and so forth. And we talked about that kind of thing.
Were you there at the table when he was having a delicious lunch with your fellow firefighters?
Yeah, actually, all the firefighters on duty today were at the table with the president, and ex-mayor Giuliani was there, and maybe 2 Secret Service people. The door was closed, and it was just us. It was very warm, very nice. He's very, very informal. He's a very friendly person.
Did he eat all of that? What was it? Eggplant Parmesan, veal Parmesan? What did you have?
Yeah, he ate quite a bit. No. Actually, no, just joking. He ate a moderate amount of food, a few bites, and he had a nice salad with us. And I think he was happy to be there. He was very loquacious, big talker, but very friendly, very approachable. Really didn't get the feeling that I was with the President of the United States. It was very easy, very enjoyable. I'll never forget it.
I'm sure you won't, and I'm sure your fellow firefighters will never forget it either. Captain, on behalf of all of our viewers, thank you so much for what you're doing. I know this is a very special day for you, but be aware that everyone always appreciates firefighters, especially after 9/11, because what you do, risking your lives every single day, is so very important. We appreciate it very much. Captain Tom Vendito. I hope I'm pronouncing your name right, Captain. Thanks so much for spending some time with us.
Perfect, sir. Thank you very much.
Excellent.
The SEAL team coming to kill Osama bin Laden was just seconds from fast roping to the ground when one helicopter came down on bin Laden's outer wall.
Breaking into as it did so with the main body of the helicopter falling into the compound where the SEAL team was, the tail section falling outside of the compound.
That crash revealed a secret to the world. America has a stealth helicopter.
Never ever seen a cap like this on any variant of any Black Hawk.
Gareth Jennings monitors aviation technology for Janes. He says Army Blackhawks are normally painted olive green.
This particular one is in a gray color, not just any gray, it's infrared suppressant gray.
Part of the fuselage is shaped like an F-22 stealth fighter, which is designed to defeat radar.
If you eliminate right angles in an aircraft design, radar waves can't bounce back.
Jennings says it's got extra rotor blades, which makes it harder to hear. Compare the sound of a normal Black Hawk with an experimental stealth helicopter. Almost sounds like it's going away from you. With bin Laden the target, the mission so dangerous, it's unlikely this was the modified Black Hawk's first flight. Remember, the American public learned of the F-117 stealth fighter during the invasion of Panama in 1989, 9 years after it started flying.
And had this particular helicopter not crashed, we would still have no idea of its existence.
But now everyone knows. The SEALs blew up the main body of the helicopter in the compound. This was the part they couldn't get to. A U.S. official confirms Pakistan has it now, which raises the possibility it could give the technology to others.
That has to be of great concern to the U.S. Department of Defense, because with that technology, the Chinese or any other third party can then either incorporate that technology into their own aircraft, or they can figure out ways to defeat that technology.
Remember, the SEALs tried to blow it up, but at that point, they had the body of Osama bin Laden. They had been on the ground almost 40 minutes. So they had to weigh going back to set a second set of explosives versus getting away and completing the mission they were sent there to accomplish. Chris Lawrence, CNN, Washington.
Kein öffentliches Foto zeugt davon, dass Al-Qaida-Führer Bin Laden tot ist, erschossen von US-Soldaten in seinem Haus im pakistanischen Abbottabad. Der fehlende Beweis hatte in der islamischen Welt Zweifel geweckt und Verschwörungstheorien ins Kraut schießen lassen über die Hintergründe der Kommandoaktion. Nun hat Al-Qaida selbst den Tod ihres Führers bestätigt. Im Internet kündigte das Terrornetzwerk zugleich Vergeltung an. Udo Lelischkis in Washington, also Al-Qaida bestätigt den Tod Bin Ladens. Wie sind die Reaktionen heute in den USA?
Nun, die Meldung wird hier weitgehend als authentisch wahrgenommen. Man sagt, sie ist erschienen auf genau den Internetseiten, die Al-Qaida normalerweise benutzt. Datiert ist sie mit dem 3. Mai, also Dienstag, und sie enthält neben dem Eingeständnis, dass Bin Laden tot ist, auch eine Warnung. Sie haben es bereits gesagt, die Freude der Amerikaner werde bald in Trauer umschlagen, heißt es da. Man vermutet, dass dieses Eingeständnis jetzt den Weg freimachen soll für eine Nachfolgeregelung. Und die meisten Beobachter spekulieren, dass die bisherige Nummer 2, Ahmed Zawahiri, diese Aufgabe übernehmen wird von Bin Laden. Für Barack Obama eine sehr gute Nachricht. Es bedeutet ja ein sehr schnelles Ende all dieser Verschwörungstheorien. Und im Grunde war es dann auch richtig, im Nachhinein das Foto Bin Ladens nicht zu veröffentlichen. Das war ja seine Entscheidung gestern.
Auch die Umstände der Tötung Bin Ladens sorgt weiter für Diskussionen. Heute meldet sich die UN zu Wort. Was wird hier gefordert?
Ja, die beiden UN-Sonderberichterstatter fordern Aufklärung von den USA über den Tatablauf. Der Hintergrund dieser Forderung ist völlig klar. Es gab immer andere Darstellungen. Die erste war, Bin Laden wurde in einem Feuergefecht getötet. Dann erfuhren wir, nein, er war unbewaffnet, machte aber eine Bewegung, die als gefährlich erachtet wurde und wurde daher im Stress quasi erschossen in einer Art Notwehr. Inzwischen aber lernen wir, dass nur ein einziger Mensch gefeuert hat bei dieser ganzen Operation, nämlich der Kurier, der die CIA auf die Spur Bin Ladens brachte. Alle anderen Männer, die auch fotografiert wurden, hatten keine Waffen, so heißt es. Die Soldaten haben auch den Sohn Bin Ladens erschossen, der unbewaffnet war. Und jetzt ist es ehrlich gesagt relativ schwierig, glaube ich, aus der Distanz mit diesen bruchstückhaften Fakten zu entscheiden. War das eine von vornherein geplante Hinrichtung oder, wie behauptet wird nach wie vor, war auch eine Festnahme möglich und geplant, aber dann vor Ort dann doch nicht mehr durchführbar, weil eben so viel Gefahr bestand. Überall in allen Zimmern, auch in dem Bin Laden starb, gab es Waffen. Das muss man auch ergänzen.
Danke, Udo Lelischkis, live aus Washington.
Information gleaned from the materials seized at Osama bin Laden's hideout indicates that in February of 2010, Al-Qaeda members discussed a plan to derail trains by putting obstacles on the tracks. A U.S. official says they made specific mention of doing so over valleys and on bridges, presumably to maximize the potential for catastrophe. The notice that's been sent out to law enforcement does not mention any specific city or rail system, officials say, but the plotters did discuss having the attacks coincide with the 10-year 9/11 anniversary in September. U.S. officials are going out of their way to say that this was aspirational, not operational. There is no indication that there is any imminent threat to rail systems in the U.S. In the words of one official, it doesn't appear to be anything more than an idea on paper. When I asked whether or not higher-ups in Al-Qaeda had sanctioned this plan, I was told there was no indication that this was blessed by Osama bin Laden or any other Al-Qaeda leader. It's worth noting that terrorists have repeatedly struck rail systems in London and Madrid, for example. They are open, hard to secure, so it's no real surprise that they continue to be discussed. Also, when news of Osama bin Laden's death was announced, many rail systems, recognizing the potential for retaliatory strikes, increased securities. Operators are well aware they are potential targets. Experts say that they continue to pore over the material that was taken in the raid in Pakistan. There is an expectation that there will be many more notices and bulletins of this sort to come. Gene Meserve, CNN, Washington.
Terrornetzwerk Al-Qaida hat heute offiziell bestätigt, dass ihr Führer Osama bin Laden tot ist, und sie hat gleichzeitig zu Racheakten aufgerufen. Amerikanische Elitesoldaten hatten bin Laden in seinem Versteck in Pakistan erschossen. Fotos des Toten will die US-Regierung nicht veröffentlichen. Auf den beschlagnahmten Computern bin Ladens haben die Amerikaner offenbar auch Pläne für verheerende Anschläge in den USA gefunden. Aus New York, Carsten Mierke.
An geheimen Orten in den USA sitzen hunderte CIA-Experten unter Hochdruck über den beschlagnahmten Bin Laden, Computern, Festplatten und CDs. Jetzt haben sie ein erstes Ergebnis. Al-Qaida plante offenbar Anschläge auf amerikanische Züge. Manipulierte Gleise sollten dafür sorgen, dass ganze Expresszüge von Brücken oder in Schluchten stürzen. Es ist ein Alarmzeichen, eine Warnung. Es ist nicht sehr konkret, aber wir sollten es trotzdem ernst nehmen und alle zuständigen Behörden informieren. Immerhin, der Jahrestag von 9/11 war als mögliches Datum genannt, die Umgebung von Großstädten als Ort. Diese Leute wollen stets Washington, New York oder LA angreifen, weil die sie damit beeindrucken wollen, sonst nichts kennen. Es ist erst der Anfang der Auswertung, die Hoffnungen aber sind enorm groß. Es ist ungefähr so bedeutsam wie damals im Zweiten Weltkrieg die Entschlüsselung von Hitlers Geheimcode. Unter anderem will man mit den Daten auch Bin Ladens Stellvertreter al-Zawahiri auf die Spur kommen. Unterdessen wird berichtet, dass das CIA schon über Monate ein Haus gleich neben Bin Ladens Versteck angemietet hatte. Gespräche wurden abgehört, mögliche Fluchttunnel gesucht. Aber selbst die Satellitenüberwachung einer langen, schlachsigen Person im Innenhof brachte nur eine 60- bis 80-prozentige Sicherheit, dass die Navy Seals hier tatsächlich auf Bin Laden treffen würden. Die US-Elite-Truppe mit ihrer gnadenlos harten Ausbildung erwartet heute in Kentucky den Besuch Präsident Obamas. Er möchte den beteiligten Elitesoldaten für deren Einsatz danken.
Und Deutschland saniert, doch für Bahnreisende zwischen Solingen und Remscheid bleibt die Brücke weiter gesperrt. Denn die Bahn hatte buchstäblich nicht mit Passagieren gerechnet, wie Martin Toroxel berichtet.
Sie ist die höchste Eisenbahnbrücke Deutschlands, über stolze 100 Jahre alt. Doch die Signale stehen auf Rot. Das Gleis ist zwar willig, aber das Fleisch zu schwer für die Münchstener Brücke. Mit dem Fleischgewicht sind Passagiere gemeint und die hatten die Ingenieure einfach vergessen. Im Zulassungsantrag für die renovierte Brücke hatten die Planer nur das Leergewicht der Züge berechnet und deshalb bleibt die Strecke jetzt gesperrt.
Ich war auch verärgert, dass Bahningenieure es heute nicht mehr zustande bringen, anständige Berechnungen zu machen. Das ist schon verwunderlich, weil man es angeblich mit Fachleuten zu tun hat. Aber jeder blamiert sich so gut er kann.
Bei einer Überprüfung der Brücke im letzten Jahr wurden statische Mängel festgestellt. Vor 5 Monaten begannen dann Sanierungsarbeiten. Ein leerer Zug, der zur Berechnung genommen wurde, wiegt knapp 70 Tonnen. Mit Passagieren allerdings 10 mehr, also 80 Tonnen. Doch die wurden einfach vergessen. Über 3000 Fahrgäste, die zwischen Solingen und Remscheid hin und her pendeln, müssen jetzt mit Bussen einen großen Umweg in Kauf nehmen.
Katastrophal, das geht jetzt schon so circa über 5 Monate. Und wenn ich zur Frühschicht will, also ich komme regelmäßig 15 Minuten zu spät, die ich dann auch abgezogen bekomme.
Die Bahn ist peinlich berührt und erklärt schriftlich, die Deutsche Bahn bedauert ausdrücklich den gemachten Fehler und entschuldigt sich bei den Reisenden, die diese Strecke nutzen. Jetzt muss bei der Sanierung nachgebessert werden, doch bis der Verkehr wieder rollt, wird wohl noch viel Zeit über die Wupper gehen.
Himmelblau, Sonne satt, Bikini knapp und die Aussichten einfach herrlich. Deutschland bereitet sich auf ein traumhaftes Wochenende vor. Danke an Uta, denn so heißt das Hoch, das für Temperaturen bis 30 Grad sorgt. Carsten Lüb.
Ab ins Freibad, auch wenn die 30 Grad noch 1-2 Tage entfernt sind, macht nichts. Das Wasser im Becken ist geheizt und solange die Sonne scheint, macht es Spaß. Auch wenn der eine oder andere nach dem Kälteeinbruch der vergangenen Tage noch verunsichert ist. Lange Hose, kurze Hose, mit oder ohne Jacke. Schließlich zeigte erst am Dienstag der Winter kurz seine eisigen Krallen. Schnee im Mai, das ist vorbei. Statt Eis gibt es Hochzeitsblumen. Seit heute kann auf dem Brocken im Harz geheiratet werden. Wir gratulieren und widmen uns den Plänen nicht frisch Vermählter.
Radeln gehen und einfach in die Sonne sitzen und die Sonne genießen.
Raus in den Garten grillen und das war's.
Ich gehe mit unseren Hunden eine große Gassi-Runde.
Ich sitze gerne hier am Balkon, Füße hoch, was lesen.
Die Bauern machen sich Sorgen, weil es ihnen zu trocken ist, gilt aber nicht für alle. Erdbeerbauer Küppers findet die Wärme toll.
Ja, wir sind froh, dass wir so früh sind. Die Erdbeeren sind dieses Jahr 3 bis 4 Wochen vor dem letzten Jahr.
Ob Binz auf Rügen, Sylt, Hamburg oder Berlin, überall das gleiche Bild: Sommer. So viel Sommer, dass die Stadt Dortmund ihre Bürger bittet, die Bäume zu wässern. 50 bis 70 Liter Wasser pro Woche dürfen es bei diesem Wetter ruhig sein. Auch die Bundeskanzlerin zog es ins Freie. Sie ist jetzt Patin eines Pinguins im Stralsunder Ozeaneum. Angela heißt die Tante, Alexandra das Patenkind und Uta das Hoch, das uns alle jubeln lässt.
Juhu, Sonne! Von Osama Bin Laden ist der US-Präsident noch immer damit beschäftigt, seinen Erfolg zu vermarkten. Jetzt besuchte er die Navy Seals, die Bin Laden in seinem pakistanischen Versteckangriffen unterschossen. Er verlieh den Soldaten Orden und lobte sie für einen gut ausgeführten Job. Allerdings hinter verschlossenen Türen. Aus den USA, Stefan Strote.
Als Fort Campbells Fallschirmjäger ihren Oberbefehlshaber begrüßten, hatte der Präsident den wichtigsten Termin des Tages mit einer anderen Einheit schon hinter sich. Obamas Wagenkolonne auf dem Weg zu einem Treffen mit Elitesoldaten der Navy Seals, die dem Präsidenten eine Stunde lang den genauen Ablauf ihrer Kommandoaktion gegen Bin Laden schilderten. Keine Kameras, nach wie vor höchste Geheimstufe. Die Navy Seals gelten jetzt erst recht als die beste Elitetruppe der Welt. Ihre Ausbildung, hier Trainingsvideos, ist brutal. Die meisten Einsätze werden nie bekannt, aber diesmal war es anders. Denn SEAL Team 6 hat Amerikas Staatsfeind Nummer 1 zur Strecke gebracht. Ganze 38 Minuten dauerte das Kommandounternehmen. Was Fernsehsender später am Computer darstellten, konnte man im Lagerraum des Weißen Hauses zumindest streckenweise live verfolgen. Es waren Minuten, die uns wie Tage vorkamen, sagte einer der Anwesenden später. Das offizielle Video des Weißen Hauses zeigt die Erleichterung im Raum, als der Präsident und sein Sicherheitsteam die Nachricht hörten, auf die Amerika fast 10 Jahre lang gewartet hat. Osama Bin Laden ist tot. Es war der erste Schritt auf dem Weg, Al-Qaida zu besiegen. Jetzt haben wir den Kopf abgeschlagen, wir werden auch den Rest besiegen. Ich will euch nichts vormachen, es wird ein harter Kampf. Aber mit diesem Erfolg haben wir eine neue Phase dieses Krieges erreicht. Es ist gut für unsere Moral. Es hat ein bisschen gedauert, Bin Laden auszuschalten, aber jetzt sind wir alle ziemlich zufrieden. Obamas Botschaft, wir müssen wachsam bleiben. Aber eine knappe Woche nach dem bisher erfolgreichsten Schlag gegen Al-Qaida gönnen sich die Soldaten und ihr Oberbefehlshaber eine kleine Siegesfeier im Kampf gegen den Terrorismus.
In Wahrheit starb der Terrorfürst wohl wie ein Gefangener seiner selbst. Aus Angst, entdeckt zu werden, hat er offenbar 5 Jahre lang seine Villa in Abbottabad nicht verlassen. Von dort leitete er weiter den Terror Al-Qaidas. Das zumindest sollen Videos beweisen, die der US-Geheimdienst gefunden und jetzt freigegeben hat. Aus den USA, Carsten Mierke.
Home Story eines Terrorchefs. Einsam, alt und in eine gammelige Decke gehüllt, seppt sich Bin Laden durch seine eigenen Videos. Fasziniert von sich wirkt er in seinem armseligen Versteck. Wenn er diese Aufnahmen macht, gibt er genaue Anweisungen an den Kameramann und hat seinen grauen Bart sorgfältig gefärbt. Der Terrorchef war eitel. Diese Videos sind höchstens 2 Jahre alt und die US-Regierung will damit belegen, dass Bin Laden bis zu seinem Tod aktiv Al-Qaida steuerte. Auch in Abbottabad hat man die Videos gesehen, doch viele Leute wollen noch immer nicht glauben, dass sich Bin Laden tatsächlich in diesem Haus versteckt hatte. Ein Fremder wäre uns hier aufgefallen, den hätten wir intensiv beobachtet, sagt der stellvertretende Bürgermeister. Ich finde, die Amerikaner sollten jetzt auch das Video der Tötung veröffentlichen, damit wir das alles glauben. Dieser 12-jährige Junge war öfter in dem Haus, um mit Bin Ladens Kindern zu spielen. Einen alten Mann hat er dort nie gesehen, aber sie hatten Überwachungskameras, erzählt er, und sie haben mir 2 Hasen geschenkt. Doch während viele Pakistanier noch zweifeln, sucht Al-Qaida schon einen Nachfolger. Den jemenitischen Hassprediger mit US-Pass al-Awlaki oder eher wahrscheinlich Osamas Stellvertreter El-Zawahiri. Doch der ist in weiten Teilen des Terrornetzwerks unbeliebt. Er als Nachfolger, das würde Al-Qaida sehr schwächen und die USA hätten ein wichtiges Ziel erreicht. Wer immer es wird, die CIA wird auch ihn jagen. Und wer dies zu Hause nachspielen möchte, ein US-Anbieter hat bereits, geschmackssicher oder nicht, ein Videospiel zur Bin Laden-Erschießung auf den Markt gebracht.
Atomwaffe, 11.000 Kilometer Reichweite, 40 Tonnen wiegt so eine Rakete. Und davon gibt es in Russland 18 Stück. auf mobilen. Die sind eben auch schwer zu zerstören im Vorhinein, weil die eben mobil sind. Man kann die wegtransportieren. Dann gibt es noch 51 weitere Silo-gestützte Raketen. Man mag sich wirklich nicht vorstellen, was diese Waffen für eine ungeheure Zerstörungskraft haben. Da rollen jetzt nochmal so Schützenpanzer. Ja, die Topol M, das ist erst seit 2008. Vorher war es bei den anderen Paraden, hat man auf solche, ich sag mal, auf die schrecklichste Waffe aus dem Arsenal verzichtet. Das wurde nicht auf dem Roten Platz gezeigt, Wolfgang.
Diese Schützenpanzer sind beflaggt mit den Flaggen der 3 Teilstreitkräfte, die anfangs vorgetragen wurden vor Beginn der Parade. Und das ist halt der Abschluss.
Da
Nun
sehen
kommen
wir
die
schon.
Hubschrauber.
Die Hubschrauber, das sind diese Mi-8 Allzweck-Hubschrauber, die es auch schon lange gibt. Zigtausend Stück gibt es davon, mehr als 10.000. Die tragen jetzt die verschiedenen Flaggen, Wolfgang. Hier nochmal Luftaufnahmen. Ja, diesmal nur Hubschrauber, keine Flugzeuge mit dabei. Und da sieht man ganz vorneweg die russische Trikolore.
Und die Flaggen der Teilstreitkräfte.
Ja, das ist der letzte Teil der Parade. Die geht jetzt hiermit eigentlich schon langsam zu Ende. Wie gesagt, Flugzeuge sind diesmal nicht dabei.
Nach der Tornado-Serie bereiten sich die Menschen jetzt auf ein Jahrhunderthochwasser am Mississippi vor. Diese ungewöhnliche Häufung von Wetterextremen hängt mit dem Klimawandel zusammen und der ist zum Teil vom Menschen gemacht. Nun gibt es aber auch natürliche Klimaschwankungen. Wie groß oder klein ihr Anteil am Klimawandel ist, das wollen Forscher im europaweiten Millennium Project klären. Und dazu schauen sie auch in die Archive der Natur.
Die natürliche Kraft der Sonne, wie auch Abgase, die durch menschliches Wirken in die Atmosphäre gelangen, beeinflussen das Klima der Erde. Wie groß der Anteil der menschlichen CO2-Emissionen ist und wie stark natürliche Faktoren den Klimaverlauf beeinflussen, ist die entscheidende Frage. Um die natürlichen Klimaveränderungen besser zu verstehen, haben nun Forscher europaweit die langfristigen Temperaturschwankungen rekonstruiert.
Wir sehen, dass das Klima über die letzten 1000 Jahre immer geändert hat. Und was wir an diesen Änderungen hier, an den Schwankungen sehen, das sind die Schwankungen der natürlichen Einflussfaktoren, der Vulkane und der Sonne. Das hier, das sind große tropische Vulkanereignisse. Da können wir an dieser Kurve sehen, beispielsweise der Vulkan Tambora hat im Alpenraum oder in Zentraleuropa für 5, 6, 7 Jahre die Sommertemperaturen um so und so viel Grad Celsius gekühlt.
Große Vulkanausbrüche wirken sich auf das globale und regionale Klima aus. Wie stark und wo, weiß man nicht genau. Ein weiterer wichtiger Klimafaktor, der die Temperaturen weltweit beeinflusst, sind die natürlichen Schwankungen der Sonnenaktivität.
Leider haben wir Temperaturaufzeichnungen gemessen mit Instrumenten erst seit dem 19. Jahrhundert, vielleicht seit dem 18. Jahrhundert vereinzelt. Und das ist genau diejenige Zeit, wo ja auch der Mensch begonnen hat, das Klima zu verändern. Das heißt, wir haben die natürlichen Klimaänderungen und die menschverursachten Klimaänderungen überlagert. Mit der Klimageschichte gelingt es uns nun, diese Zeitreihe zu verlängern, zurück in die Vergangenheit und dort zu untersuchen, wie die natürlichen Einflussfaktoren das Klima verändert haben.
Klimageschichte ist Detektivarbeit. Für ihre Indiziensuche nutzen Forscher eine Vielzahl unterschiedlicher Quellen. Am Oeschger-Zentrum für Klimaforschung in Bern untersuchen sie unter anderem Bohrkerne aus Alpenseen. Jahr für Jahr setzt sich eine neue Sedimentschicht auf dem Grund des Sees ab. Die jährlichen Ablagerungen dieser Seesedimente sind klar zu erkennen, was eine präzise Datierung ermöglicht, ähnlich wie bei den Jahrringen im Holz.
Die Seesedimente speichern sehr unterschiedliche Klimainformationen. Also einerseits bekommen wir Informationen über den Winter, andererseits über den Sommer. Dann bekommen wir Informationen über jährliche Schwankungen, dekadische Schwankungen, 100-jährige Schwankungen, teilweise 1000-jährige Schwankungen. Das ist natürlich wahnsinnig spannend. Und zudem haben wir dann noch sehr viele unterschiedliche Indikatoren, also einerseits Reste von tierischen Organismen, Pflanzenreste, Pigmente. Also es gibt einen sehr guten Überblick über das Klima in der Vergangenheit.
Um dem Bohrkern seine Informationen zu entlocken, müssen die Forscher einen beträchtlichen Aufwand betreiben. Sorgfältig wird die Ablagerung jedes einzelnen Jahres dem Kern entnommen und auf verschiedene Proben verteilt. Jede dieser Proben wird anschließend separat aufbereitet und auf einen bestimmten Indikator hin untersucht. Ein solcher Indikator sind Kopfkapseln von Zuckmückenlarven, die in den Sedimenten konserviert worden sind. Unter dem Mikroskop sucht die Forscherin nach den verschiedenartig geformten Überresten, die sie zur genaueren Betrachtung aus der mit Wasser versetzten Sedimentsprobe herausfischt.
Meine Aufgabe ist es, die Juli-Temperaturen zu rekonstruieren. Die Zuckmücken sind ein Indikator für Juli-Temperaturen und können diese auf plus minus ein halbes Grad genau wiedergeben.
Wichtig für die Klimaforscherin ist sowohl die absolute Zahl der Larven in der Probe wie auch die Zusammensetzung der Population. Manche Zuckmückenarten vermehren sich besser in wärmerem Wasser, andere bevorzugen kühlere Temperaturen. Erst die Unterscheidung der verschiedenen Arten anhand der unterschiedlichen Mundwerkzeuge erlaubt den präzisen Rückschluss auf die Juli-Temperaturen. Ein weiterer Klimaindikator, der in den Seesedimenten gespeichert ist, wird erst nach einem aufwendigen Verfahren sichtbar. Damit er die Überreste von Goldalgen auswerten kann, versetzt der Forscher seine Sedimentsproben mit Wasserstoffperoxid und Salzsäure, welche die organischen Stoffe und den Kalk auflösen. Zurück bleiben winzig kleine, von bloßem Auge nicht mehr sichtbare Schalenrückstände verschiedener Algenarten. Für die Klimaforscher von besonderem Interesse sind die Goldalgen. Der Biologe Christian Kamenik hat eine Methode entwickelt, die es erlaubt, aus den runden Schutzhüllen von Goldalgen die Wintertemperaturen zu rekonstruieren. Diese Entdeckung ist von besonderer Bedeutung, weil andere biologische Indikatoren im Winter Vegetationspause haben und deshalb für die kalte Jahreszeit keine Informationen liefern.
Das Besondere bei den Goldalgen ist, dass sie eine sehr ausgeprägte Saisonalität haben. Sprich, wir haben Formen, die im Winter gebildet werden, Formen, die im Sommer gebildet werden. Man kann die voneinander sehr gut unterscheiden. Die haben sehr unterschiedliche Ornamentation, also Stacheln, wabenartige Strukturen. Einige sind glatt. Man kann sie über die Größe sehr gut unterscheiden. Und aufgrund der gesamten Zusammensetzung über das Jahr können wir dann feststellen, gibt es mehr Formen, die im Winter gebildet worden sind, gibt es mehr Formen, die im Sommer gebildet worden sind. Und auf diese Art und Weise bekommen wir eine einzigartige Information, und zwar über das Winterklima.
Nach Abschluss der je eigenen Analysen führen die Zuckmückenspezialistin und der Algenforscher die Ergebnisse ihrer Auswertungen zusammen. Ihre Resultate sind wichtige Puzzlesteine des Klima-Millenniums-Projekts. Erst die Zusammenführung von Hunderten solcher Einzelarbeiten aus unterschiedlichen Disziplinen ermöglicht die Rekonstruktion von Temperaturschwankungen in einer Zeit, als das Klima noch nicht vom Menschen beeinflusst war. Diese Neuerkenntnisse sind wichtig für die Plausibilität von Klimamodellen und dürften künftig bei Klimaprognosen eine wichtige Rolle spielen.
Die Modellläufe, die heute gebraucht werden, um zukünftige Klimaszenarien zu berechnen, die berücksichtigen die natürliche Klimavariabilität nicht. Das heißt, in der Zukunft wird immer mit einer konstanten Sonne und konstanten Vulkanen gerechnet. Wie wir aus unseren Untersuchungen sehen, haben gerade die Sonne und die Vulkane einen sehr großen Einfluss auf das Klima. Das heißt, diese natürliche Klimavariabilität, die ist jedem zukünftigen Klimaverlauf überlagert. Oder anders gesagt, wenn wir Pech haben, es wenig Vulkanereignisse gibt und die Sonne stark leuchtet, könnte sich die Temperatur viel stärker erwärmen, als was wir heute prognostizieren. Oder wenn wir, etwas salopp gesagt, Glück haben mit vielen Vulkanen und einer schwachen Sonne, könnte sich die Temperaturerwärmung wesentlich schwächer manifestieren als das, was wir heute berechnen.
Langsam aber sicher müssen wir uns von dem sehr warmen und extrem trockenen Frühsommerwetter verabschieden. Auch hier auf der Zugspitze Deutschlands höchsten Berg sind die Spuren der außergewöhnlich vielen Sonne und der hohen Temperaturen deutlich zu sehen. Der Schnee schmilzt viel früher als normal. Dazu kommt der schneearme Winter und daher liegen hier statt der um diese Jahreszeit üblichen rund 4 Meter Schnee derzeit nicht mal mehr 2 Meter. Aber das Ende des fast ewig blauen Himmels ist auch hier in Sicht. Die ersten Schauer und Gewitter erreichen morgen bereits die Mitte und später den Osten des Landes. Und auch zum Donnerstag hin entstehen vor allem im Lauf des Tages wieder einige teils kräftige Regengüsse und Gewitter. Der Höhepunkt der großen Trockenheit ist also erstmal erreicht. Hier die Details der kommenden Wetteränderung. Morgen Mittwoch in einem Streifen vom Schwarzwald über die östlichen Mittelgebirge bis rauf zur Ostsee bereits einzelne Schauer und Gewitter. Davor scheint im Südosten noch mal länger die Sonne und auch dahinter wird es rasch wieder freundlich und trocken. Die Temperaturen erreichen noch mal 20 bis 26 Grad, an der Nordsee nur noch um 16 Grad. Am Donnerstag werden vor allem nach Süden hin die Schauer und Gewitter häufiger und kräftiger. Am Freitag nochmal recht freundlich, ehe es zum Wochenende hin deutlich wechselhafter und vor allem kühler wird, Temperaturen dann kaum noch über 20 Grad. Übrigens, so wenig Schnee um diese Jahreszeit lag zum letzten Mal im Jahr 2007 und damals folgte ein ziemlich durchwachsener und feuchter Hochsommer. Also lieber nochmal kurz Sonne tanken und genießen. Wir sehen uns morgen wieder und damit zurück nach Köln.
Halten die Menschen den Atem an. Viele Häuser und Farmen stehen unter Wasser. Im US-Bundesstaat Tennessee hat das Hochwasser jetzt die Stadt Memphis erreicht. Bislang halten die Dämme dem gewaltigen Druck der fast 15 Meter hohen Welle stand. Die schraffierte Fläche zeigt, dass der Mississippi momentan auf eine Breite von fast 5 Kilometern angeschwollen ist. In Memphis erreicht die Flutwelle in diesen Stunden ihren Scheitelpunkt. Christoph Röckerath ist für uns vor Ort. Christoph, wie bedrohlich ist die Lage dort im Moment?
Die Lage ist nach wie vor sehr angespannt, aber die Behörden sagen, dass sie sie im Moment zumindest unter Kontrolle haben. Und wie groß das Ausmaß dieses Hochwassers ist, das können wir eigentlich ganz gut hier sehen, wo ich stehe. Ich befinde mich am Rand eines Freizeitparkes in Ufernähe. Und wie Sie sehen, sehen Sie davon gar nichts. Überall Wasser, soweit das Auge reicht. 3-mal so breit wie sonst ist der Mississippi-Fluss geworden. Und die letzte Nacht, die war natürlich sehr spannend, weil die Frage sich stellte, wie lange würde das Wasser tatsächlich ansteigen. Und das haben wir begleitet und das können wir uns jetzt mal anschauen.
Auf den ersten Blick wirkt die Südstaaten-Idylle perfekt in Memphis, Tennessee. Die Raddampfer fahren noch, sie haben mehr Platz denn je. Der mächtige Mississippi demonstriert seine Kraft. Die Bewohner müssen zusehen, voller Sorge und gleichzeitig fasziniert. Was denken Sie? Das ist Wahnsinn. Es macht mir Angst, es ist verrückt. Ich hoffe, das Wasser steigt nicht noch weiter. Doch die Nacht über steigt es weiter. Ganz langsam, wie schon seit Wochen. Das leicht erhöhte Stadtzentrum wird nur deshalb nicht zur Insel, weil am Stadtrand die Deiche halten. Tag für Tag. So ist das Hochwasser für manche nicht mehr als ein leicht schauriges Spektakel, an das man sich doch nicht so recht gewöhnen mag. Zur gleichen Zeit ein paar Kilometer weiter. Am Stadtrand müssen Hunderte ihre Häuser verlassen. Viele Kirchen haben Notunterkünfte eingerichtet. Unser Haus ist zum 2. Mal überflutet worden. Wir halten das nicht mehr aus. Wir sind todtraurig. Ein komplexes Deichsystem schützt weite Teile der Stadt und lenkt die Fluten in unbewohnte Gebiete. Doch die Deiche stehen seit Wochen unter großem Druck. Bei Tagesanbruch untersuchen Ingenieure die kritischen Stellen. Hier unten kann ich meinen Daumen so in den Deich reindrücken. Das Wasser hat ihn aufgeweicht. Hier oben aber ist der Boden noch fest. Hier hat er sich noch nicht vollgesogen. Und darum geht es. Wer zuerst nachgibt, verliert. Das Kräftemessen Wasser gegen Deiche ist noch lange nicht vorbei.
Ja, die Tonleitung nach Tennessee ist ein kleines bisschen gestört. Ich hoffe trotzdem, wir verstehen Sie gleich gut, Christoph. Die Frage jetzt wird doch sein, wie lange können diese Dämme dem Druck des Wassers standhalten?
Ja, das ist die große Frage. Das Deichsystem gilt als ziemlich gut, aber die Flut ist eben auch ziemlich stur, möchte ich fast salopp sagen, weil seit Wochen sich hier die Flut nähert. Sie ist gestiegen, sie wird auch noch viele Wochen bleiben und man hat noch nie ausprobiert, wie lange Deiche einer solchen Dauerbelastung von mehreren Wochen standhalten können. Man muss auch daran denken, dass die Flutmassen nach wie vor ungebrochen sind. Man hat so komische Rechnungen aufgestellt, dass zum Beispiel alle 4 Sekunden das Wasser, was hier gerade hinter mir durchläuft, ein Fußballstadion komplett volllaufen lassen kann. Und die Behörden werden jetzt wochenlang weiter schauen müssen, dass die Deiche wirklich halten, nicht von unten aufweichen. Also dieser Kampf ist noch lange nicht zu Ende. Das wird die Menschen hier noch sehr lange beschäftigen.
Ja, das wird also eine Geduldsprobe werden für die Menschen am Mississippi. Vielen Dank, Christoph Röckerath, an Sie und Ihr Team nach Memphis.
Guten Abend, liebe Zuschauer. Morgen geht das sonnige Wetter auch an der Ostseeküste zu Ende. Wir erwarten in den Nachmittagsstunden auch dort Schauer und Gewitter. Ein Wolkenband zieht ja auf, letztendlich von Westen her und bringt uns eben Schauer und Gewitter, die über Deutschland hinwegziehen. Besonders morgen Nachmittag kräftig im Süden, aber auch heute Nacht schon im Westen. Und dahinter folgt dann ein bisschen kühlere Luft, vor allen Dingen für den Nordwesten Deutschlands. Also heute Nacht, die ersten Schauer und Gewitter sind aus Westen da. Sie ziehen weiter, aber nur über den Westen Richtung Norden, Richtung Schleswig-Holstein. Das wird dann in der zweiten Nachthälfte erreicht. Ansonsten bleibt es trocken und morgen Vormittag schwächen sich die Schauer und Gewitter erst einmal ab. Dann liegen sie so noch über dem Norden und den Westen Deutschlands. Im Osten ist es noch trocken. Und am Nachmittag beleben sich diese Schauer und Gewitter neu. Dann auf einer Linie so vom Schwarzwald hoch bis zur Ostseeküste. Die können sehr kräftig sein, zum Beispiel im Süden. Aber es bleibt lange trocken im Osten, in Berlin und südöstlichen Bayern. Auch schnell an der Nordsee kommt wieder die Sonne raus bei dem frischen Nordwestwind. Und da ist es dann schon etwas kühler. 16 bis 21 Grad haben wir dort noch. Sonst ist die Luft schwül warm und am wärmsten wird es vor den Gewittern im Osten 26 bis 27 Grad.
War ja nur so ein Regentropfen auf einen heißen Stein. Alexander Lehmann, du weißt, wir wollen immer das, was wir gerade nicht haben. Also wann gibt es ergiebigen Dauerregen?
Also mit dem Dauerregen, da müssen wir noch ein bisschen warten. Ein paar Schauer und Gewitter in der Tat sind ja schon unterwegs gewesen, beziehungsweise sind in den kommenden Stunden auch noch unterwegs. Aber bis es dann wirklich flächendeckenden Regen gibt, frühestens am Wochenende, würde ich sagen. Das heißt, bis dahin erstmal so die Schauerkategorie, aber immerhin der Trend stimmt. Hier der 15-Tage-Trend, nicht in Sachen Temperaturen, sondern in Sachen Luftdruck. Also der Luftdruck sinkt, sprich tiefer Luftdruck kommt allmählich auf uns zu. Und damit steigen natürlich auch die Chancen auf ein paar größere Regengebiete, die uns dann hoffentlich tatsächlich mal überqueren.
Das Hochwasser des Mississippi bedroht jetzt auch 10 Ölraffinerien im US-Bundesstaat Louisiana sowie hunderte Öl- und Gasquellen. An Memphis ist der Scheitel der Flutwelle mittlerweile vorbeigezogen. Hier haben die Dämme standgehalten. Jetzt drücken die Wassermassen flussabwärts. Vor allem New Orleans und Baton Rouge sind bedroht. Zehntausende Menschen bereiten sich darauf vor, ihre Häuser zu verlassen.
Mann Yves Rossi Weltraum erlangt. Der 51 Jahre alte Schweizer hat festgeschnallt an Mini-Flügel samt Raketenantrieb sogar schon mal den Ärmelkanal überquert. Nun hat sich Rossi im Grand Canyon vor großer Kulisse in die Tiefe gestürzt. Ulrich Oppold mit den faszinierenden Bildern.
Schon der atemberaubende Blick in den Grand Canyon aus dem Hubschrauber ist nichts für Menschen mit Höhenangst. Man sollte schon schwindelfrei sein wie der Schweizer Yves Rossi, der sich vorgenommen hat, durch die weltberühmte Schlucht mit angeschnallten Flügeln zu rasen. 4 Düsen hat er für den Antrieb, 60 Kilo wiegen die Tragflächen, doch kurz vor dem Start macht er einen Rückzieher. Ich fliege heute lieber nicht, ich fühle mich nicht gut, konnte letzte Nacht nicht schlafen. Doch am nächsten Tag passt alles. Ein Hubschrauber bringt den Raketenmann über dem Grand Canyon in Position. Rossi muss seinen Körper aus dem freien Fall in die Waagrechte bringen. Er gibt mit den Düsen Gas und mit 300 Stundenkilometern rast er gefährlich nahe an den Felswänden durch die Schlucht. Wenn ich runter will, muss ich mich beugen. Zum Steigen strecke ich mich ein bisschen und so lenke ich, dass es wie ein Kind das Flugzeug spielt. Yves Rossi hat schon einige waghalsige Flüge hinter sich. 2009 wollte er von Marokko nach Spanien über die Straße von Gibraltar fliegen und stürzte ins Meer. Aber er hat ja schon bewiesen, dass er es kann. Als erster Mensch flog er mit Jetflügeln über den Ärmelkanal und jetzt durch den Grand Canyon. Nach 8 Minuten Nervenkitzel hat er auch dieses Abenteuer geschafft.
Im Osten Spaniens haben tausende Menschen die Nacht im Freien verbracht. Nach einer vorläufigen Bilanz wurden in der Region Murcia 8 Menschen getötet und mehr als 160 verletzt. Das Militär sucht unter den Trümmern eingestürzter Gebäude nach möglichen weiteren Opfern.
Als der Glockenturm der Kirche einstürzt, steht ein Reporter des Regionalfernsehens nur wenige Meter entfernt. Haben Sie gesehen, wie alles zusammengekracht ist, ruft er aufgeregt ins Mikrofon. Pure Verzweiflung dagegen bei ihm. Mein Gott, wie ist das möglich? Die Menschen in Lorca, einer 100.000 Einwohnerstadt in der Provinz Murcia, sind geschockt. Nach einem kleineren Beben kurz nach 17 Uhr werden ihre Häuser knapp 2 Stunden später von einem zweiten, stärkeren Beben erschüttert. Es ist alles runtergefallen auf den Boden. Auch der Tisch ist mit allem drauf umgefallen. Die meisten Opfer sind von herabfallenden Trümmern erschlagen worden. Da das Epizentrum nahe der Erdoberfläche lag, richtete das vergleichsweise schwache Beben dennoch schwere Schäden an. Auch an einem Krankenhaus, das noch am Abend evakuiert wurde. Die spanische Regierung schickte eine Sondereinheit des Militärs in das Erdbebengebiet. Lorca, das 30 Kilometer entfernt von der Mittelmeerküste in den Bergen liegt, ist bei ausländischen Touristen wegen seiner außergewöhnlichen Osterprozessionen und seiner historischen Burganlage bekannt.
Am Telefon ist der Seismologe Klaus Hinzen von der Erdbebenstation Bensberg. Herr Hinzen, Spanien gilt nicht als so besonders erdbebengefährdet. Nun erschüttern jedoch 2 Erdbeben innerhalb weniger Stunden den Südosten des Landes. Wie erklären Sie uns diese Beben?
Nun, Spanien liegt im Bereich der Grenze zwischen der afrikanischen und der europäischen Platte. Es ist sicherlich so, dass die Aktivitätsrate in Spanien nicht so hoch ist wie zum Beispiel an der gleichen Grenze in Griechenland. Aber dennoch weiß man aus der Vergangenheit, dass der Süden Spaniens des Öfteren von auch stärkeren zerstörerischen Beben betroffen gewesen ist. Also es ist für Seismologen nichts Ungewöhnliches, dass es hier gebebt hat.
Ist nun vielleicht mit weiteren, noch größeren Beben zu rechnen?
Kann man nicht mit Bestimmtheit vorhersagen. Wir haben ja gesehen, es haben sich hier 2 Beben ereignet, die sicherlich direkt miteinander im Zusammenhang stehen. Es hat auch schon eine Reihe von Nachbeben gegeben. Das ist normal. Aber ob es eventuell auch in näherer Zukunft noch zu einem stärkeren Beben an dieser Verwerfung dort in dem Bereich kommt, das kann niemand genau vorhersagen.
Danke Ihnen für diese Einschätzungen, Klaus Hinzen.
Bilder aus der Region Murcia, genauer gesagt aus der Stadt Lorca, von wo wir auch gleich mit unserem Korrespondenten Thomas Schneider sprechen werden über das Ausmaß der Zerstörungen. Gestern Nachmittag wurde ja diese Region erschüttert von 2 Erdstößen der Stärke 5,3.
Ja, und dann schauen wir...
Können da Meteorologen irgendwie was vorhersagen, was Erdbeben angeht?
Das ist etwas völlig anderes. Also wir befassen uns nun mit der Atmosphäre, mit der Lufthülle der Erde und das andere sind dann eher die Seismologen oder die Geografen, die sich mit Erdbeben befassen. Und die Vorhersage von Erdbeben ist übrigens noch schwieriger als eine Wettervorhersage.
Okay, also ganz andere Sachen eigentlich,
genau.
Die
also
nichts
ich kann
miteinander
da
zu tun haben.
nichts sagen dazu.
Okay, danke bis hierhin. Ja, Sie haben es gerade vorhin in den Nachrichten gesehen, die Bilder vom Erdbeben in Spanien. Und ein bisschen kann einen das, was gestern in Spanien passiert ist, abergläubisch machen. Denn auch die italienische Hauptstadt ging von einem Erdbeben aus. Zumindest haben viele Einwohner der Stadt Rom daran geglaubt. Sie glaubten nämlich an die Prognosen eines Hobby-Erdbebenforschers aus den 70er Jahren. Und Teile der italienischen Hauptstadt waren tatsächlich wie leer gefegt, weil man diesen Prognosen geglaubt hat. Und das, obwohl seriöse Wissenschaftler die ganze Zeit gesagt haben, das ist Humbug, Erdbeben kann man eigentlich gar nicht vorhersagen. Und dann, Stunden später, da passierte etwas im Südosten Spaniens. Und unser Spanien-Korrespondent Thomas Schneider, der ist uns jetzt zugeschaltet, und zwar aus Lorca. Er hat sich dorthin begeben. Thomas, wie sieht es eigentlich aus in dieser Erdbebenregion dort?
Nachdem ich jetzt auch bei Tageslicht einen Rundgang durchs Stadtzentrum machen konnte, kann ich sagen, dass die Mehrzahl der Häuser hier tatsächlich beschädigt ist. Zwar sind nicht sehr viele Häuser eingestürzt, aber fast alle haben Risse. Es sind Teile der Wände herausgebrochen, Dinge vom Dach heruntergefallen, die Fassaden abgeplatzt und so weiter. Und es zeigt sich jetzt nach diesem Erdbeben, dass offensichtlich bei sehr vielen Häusern sehr billig und sehr schlecht gebaut wurde. Und das ist etwas, worunter die Menschen jetzt zu leiden haben werden. Die Häuser waren einfach nicht auf ein Erdbeben vorbereitet.
Gibt es denn mittlerweile neue Zahlen, was die Toten und Verletzten angeht?
Es gibt keine neuen Zahlen, aber die Zahlen, die wir schon seit etwa 2:30 in der Nacht gehört haben, werden immer wieder bestätigt. Das heißt 8 Tote und rund 200 Verletzte. Allerdings nicht alle diese sind Schwerverletzte, also nicht alle werden in Krankenhäusern behandelt. Und ansonsten wartet man hier natürlich darauf, ob es noch weitere Nachbeben geben wird. Es soll in der Nacht mehrere kleine Nachbeben gegeben haben, die allerdings für die Menschen hier nicht zu spüren waren. So schwach waren sie. Sie wurden registriert Aber es ist natürlich möglich, dass im Laufe des Tages noch etwas passiert.
Dankeschön, Thomas Schneider, für diese aktuellen Informationen aus dem Erdbebengebiet im Südosten Spaniens.
Der Rhein ist weiter auf dem Weg zum Rinnsal. Der Pegel in Köln, der hat heute einen neuen historischen Mai-Tiefststand erreicht.
Und am Ufer, da sieht man jetzt Sachen, die normalerweise unter Wasser sind. Und wir hatten Sie aufgefordert, machen Sie davon doch mal Bilder und laden die bei aktuellestunde.de hoch. Und hier sind ein paar davon.
Schauen wir mal, diesen Motorblock, den hat Helmut Kasimirovic am Rheindeich bei Vollmerswerth fotografiert.
Ja, und am Rheinufer in Köln, da sieht es jetzt so aus. Ein Bild von Ingo Otto Reitze, Riesenstrand.
Was für eine Strandlandschaft, ja. Und Dieter S., der hat das hier gefunden, ein grünlich-schlammfarbenes Bobbycar. Sieht ein bisschen aus, wie als wenn es aus Militärbeständen käme.
Kann man aber nicht mehr gebrauchen. Und der Rhein wird wohl noch mehr skurrile Dinge freigeben, denn der Pegel fällt weiter.
Hier strömt normalerweise im Frühling der Rhein. Doch momentan liegen hier nur trockene Kiesel. Der Rhein hat so wenig Wasser wie nie zuvor in einem Mai. Nur zum Vergleich. Diese Bilder stammen aus dem August im Rekordsommer 2003. Damals war das Flussbett besonders zusammengeschrumpft. Wasserkundler Jan Böhme hat die Übersicht über den Wasserstand im Rhein und weiß, schon in wenigen Wochen könnte dieser Rekord gebrochen werden.
Also wenn es wirklich trocken bleibt und keine langen und dauerhaften Niederschläge auftreten, dann können wir vielleicht auch im Juni schon mit Rekordniedrigwasserständen rechnen.
Der ganze Rhein hat derzeit Niedrigwasser. In Emmerich ist er heute nur 2,69 Meter tief. In Duisburg 2,73 Meter, in Köln 2,30 Meter und in Kaub bei der Loreley, dort wo der Rhein besonders eng ist, sogar nur 1,85 Meter. Normalerweise ist der Rhein im Mai 2 Meter tiefer. 2 Meter, die besonders der Schifffahrt fehlen. Viele Frachter können längst nicht mehr voll beladen werden, dafür ist der Rhein zu flach. Auch Kapitän Josef Hospus fährt mit rund 1/3 weniger Getreide als sonst an Bord. Zwar ist sein Boot relativ klein, doch auch er muss sich ganz besonders konzentrieren.
Durch die Sogwirkung von Antrieb von Schiff, da muss man schon mehr aufpassen, dass rechtzeitig die Fahrt verlangsamen. Sonst kann es sein, dass man die Schiffe kollidieren praktisch oder sich berühren.
Wie viel Wasser der Rhein haben kann, zeigen diese Bilder. Sie stammen vom Hochwasser im Januar diesen Jahres. Damals war der Rhein bei Emmerich 1200 Meter breit. Jetzt misst er dort nur noch 400 Meter in der Breite, ist auf 1/3 geschrumpft. Klar, Hochwasser will keiner, doch um die Trockenheit auszugleichen, müsste es kräftig regnen. Dafür reicht das bisschen Regen im Moment nicht aus.
Die Trockenheit war so groß, dass mehrere 100 Liter pro Quadratmeter fehlen, die jetzt vom Himmel fallen müssten. Und dann möglichst als Landregen, also mehrere Tage Dauerregen, so mit 30 bis 50 Liter pro Tag pro Quadratmeter. Das wäre jetzt erforderlich, aber das ist leider nicht in Sicht.
Der Wassermangel bringt hier das Leben regelrecht in Schieflage. Die Menschen auf den Hausbooten auf einem Seitenarm des Rheins im niederländischen Nimwegen kennen das, doch nur aus dem Hochsommer. Jetzt leben sie schon im Mai mit den Schrägen.
Für die meisten Wohnbootbewohner hier auf dem Ende ist es ja so sehr schräg, kann man fast nicht mehr leben. Also ist schon sorglich dieses Jahr.
Und merken Sie das auch beim Schlafen?
Ja, ich liege mehr bei meiner Frau jetzt.
Geht es so weiter, droht dem Rhein schon in wenigen Wochen eine neue Rekordtrockenheit.
Bangladesch. Mit 164 Millionen Menschen der am dichtesten bevölkerte Flächenstaat der Erde. Und zugleich nur wenig über dem Meeresspiegel gelegen. Patricia Heidecker und das Team der Hilfsorganisation Netz sind im Juli 2007 mit dem Boot unterwegs, um Menschen zu helfen, die von einer Überflutung am Brahmaputra betroffen sind. Mit dem Nötigsten flüchten sie sich in das einzige Haus auf Stelzen, die Schule. Wenn das Wasser gesunken ist, werden sie ihr Dorf wieder aufbauen. Eine Wahl bleibt ihnen nicht. Fast ganz Bangladesch liegt nur knapp über Meereshöhe. Und wenige Zentimeter Meeresspiegelanstieg zählen hier bereits.
Das heißt, dass einerseits Inseln oder Landstriche, Küstengebiete komplett verschwinden. Andererseits heißt es aber auch, dass das Salzwasser über diese vielen Flussärme des Gangesdeltas sehr weit vordringen kann in das Landesinnere, was dazu führt, dass fruchtbares Ackerland versalzt und insofern als Ackerland nicht mehr verwendet werden kann.
Wenn das Wasser steigt, sind nicht nur Küstenregionen wie Bangladesch betroffen, sondern auch Inselstaaten weltweit. Wie eine heute veröffentlichte Studie zeigt, wird der Meeresspiegel noch schneller und höher ansteigen als bisher angenommen. Das Wissenschaftskomitee des Arktischen Rates geht nach neuesten Berechnungen davon aus, dass der Meeresspiegel bis zum Ende dieses Jahrhunderts bis zu 1,60 Meter steigen könnte. Im Jahr 2007 nahm der Weltklimarat noch an, dass der Meeresspiegel nur um maximal 59 Zentimeter steigt. Zu der deutlich milderen Prognose kam es, weil über die dynamischen Schmelzprozesse in der Arktis noch zu wenig bekannt war und diese nicht in die Berechnung einbezogen wurden.
Der große Unsicherheitsfaktor ist Grönland. Grönland hat ja einen kilometerdicken Eispanzer und wenn der komplett im Meer verschwinden würde, dann sprechen wir über einen Meeresspiegelanstieg von 7 Metern weltweit. Also da ist ein Riesenpotenzial und wir verstehen die Prozesse noch nicht gut genug, die im Zusammenhang stehen mit dem grönländischen Eisschild. Und das sind gar nicht die Schmelzprozesse, das ist ja gar nicht so schwer zu verstehen, sondern das sind die dynamischen Prozesse.
In Grönland versuchen Wissenschaftler, diese dynamischen Prozesse besser zu verstehen. Sie haben herausgefunden, dass das Schmelzwasser nicht direkt ins Meer fließt, sondern erst einmal den Gletscher infiltriert, ihn durchdringt. Durch das Wasser wird der Gletscher porös. Außerdem wirkt das Schmelzwasser wie ein Schmiermittel. Große Bruchstücke gleiten darauf ins Meer. So steigt der Meeresspiegel in kurzer Zeit enorm an. Momentan verliert Grönland etwa 150 Kubikkilometer Eis pro Jahr. Das ist das gesamte Eisvolumen der Alpen.
Wir müssen schon davon ausgehen, dass im Moment in der Arktis Dinge sich sehr, sehr schnell entwickeln und zum Teil sogar schneller, als wir es bis jetzt in unseren Modellen gesehen haben.
Bei den Klimaforschern findet ein Umdenken statt. Ein Umdenken hin zu immer schlimmeren Annahmen. Neue Methoden wie Satellitenvermessungen der weltweiten Eisflächen bringen neue, genauere Daten. So wurde auch die Schneeschmelze am Kilimandscharo genau dokumentiert. Im Gegensatz zu 2007 können die Forscher heute besser berechnen, wie sich das Grönlandeis bei steigenden Temperaturen verhalten wird. Der zu erwartende Anstieg des Meeresspiegels könnte auch in Zukunft weiter nach oben korrigiert werden. Denn der Klimawandel aufgrund des CO2-Ausstoßes ist in vollem Gange.
Der Meeresspiegel ist eine sehr träge Komponente im Klimasystem. Selbst wenn wir heute kein CO2 mehr ausstoßen würden, würde trotzdem der Meeresspiegel sich weiter nach oben entwickeln. Und in der Tat reden wir hier über Jahrhunderte. Das heißt also, wir werden auf jeden Fall vielen Generationen nach uns das Erbe des Meeresspiegelanstiegs hinterlassen.
Wächst der CO2-Ausstoß weiter an, könnte der Meeresspiegel sogar um mehrere Meter innerhalb eines Jahrhunderts ansteigen. Einen Vorgeschmack darauf bekommen die Bewohner von Venedig immer öfter. Nicht nur die Touristenmetropole ist vom Untergang bedroht. Weltweit leben 150 Millionen Menschen in Gebieten, die nur bis zu 1 Meter über Meeresniveau liegen. Weil das Land an Flussufern und Küsten oft fruchtbar ist, siedeln sich die meisten Menschen dort an, auch in Zukunft.
Wir werden 2050 wahrscheinlich 9 Milliarden Menschen haben. Wo drängen die hin? Natürlich in die Küstengebiete auch. Und genau dieser Raum wird uns verloren gehen. Ne? Das heißt, es ist eine Art Zangenbewegung. Der Klimawandel nimmt uns den Raum, aber die Menschheit vergrößert sich und braucht mehr Raum. Und das ist auf Kollisionskurs.
Früher erlebten die Dorfbewohner am Brahmaputra eine große Flut nur alle 10 Jahre. Inzwischen stehen ihre Hütten ungefähr alle 3 Jahre unter Wasser. Der Meeresspiegel wird steigen und eine Anpassung ist unausweichlich.
Der Schwarzwald ist bekannt für seine Natur. Wo Touristen Ruhe und Erholung suchen, wurde noch vor 150 Jahren Silber abgebaut. Und auch heute noch ist es ein ungewöhnlicher Arbeitsplatz für die Forschung. Rudolf Wiedmer-Schniedrich ist Geophysiker. Seit mehr als 30 Jahren lauschen er und seine Kollegen Geräuschen, die mit menschlichem Gehör gar nicht wahrzunehmen sind. Ihr wichtigstes Arbeitsgerät, extrem empfindliche Seismometer. Sie helfen ihnen beim Lauschangriff auf das Innere der Erde. Denn die Wissenschaftler wollen einem beständigen Brummen auf die Spur kommen, das die Erde von sich gibt. Weit ab von störenden Geräuschen der Zivilisation stellen sie die empfindlichen Geräte in ihrem Observatorium auf. Etwa 700 Meter geht es in den Berg hinein. Die Stollen sind größtenteils so belassen, wie sie vor 200 Jahren von den Arbeitern des Silberbergwerks geschlagen wurden. Es ist einer von weltweit nur einer Handvoll vergleichbaren Orte, an denen diese Art der Forschung überhaupt betrieben wird. Und genau deshalb hat das Black Forest Observatory in Schiltach internationalen Rang und Namen. Auch wenn die Messgeräte auf den ersten Blick aussehen, als ob sie aus dem Museum kämen.
Das Tolle an diesem Seismometer ist, dass es in seiner Empfindlichkeit unerreicht ist, nach wie vor, auch wenn es 1985 schon gebaut worden ist. Es kann Verschiebungen aufzeichnen bei einer Periode von 5 Minuten, die nur einen Zehntel Mikrometer betragen. Das heißt, der Boden hebt sich 2,5 Minuten und dann senkt er sich wieder 2,5 Minuten. Und das nur um ein Zehntel Mikrometer. So kleine Verschiebungen kann kein anderes Messgerät hier im Stollen und auch weltweit nicht aufzeichnen.
Natürlich können die Forscher auch Erdbeben nachweisen oder, wenn es sie gäbe, Erschütterungen, die von Flugzeugen, Zügen und Autos verursacht werden. Darum aber geht es ihnen nicht. Sie sind Geräuschen aus dem Erdinneren auf der Spur, Schwingungen, die immer da sind.
So nah beisammen, diese Oberflächenwellen.
12 Jahre ist es her, dass japanischen Wissenschaftlern erstmals kleine Ausschläge in ihren Messdaten auffielen, die sie nicht erklären konnten. Forscher weltweit vergleichen daraufhin ihre Daten. Schließlich gelingt es auch Rudolf Wiedmer-Schniedrich und seinen Kollegen, diese Signale nachzuweisen, in gleicher Stärke und Intensität. Sie sind denen von Erdbeben ähnlich, stammen aber nicht von ihnen. Aber er glaubt, dass sie auf andere Weise entstehen.
Ich habe hier ein Weinglas gefüllt mit Wasser. Und dieses Glas kann ich auf 2 Arten zum Schwingen anregen. Einmal mit dem Griff von einem Schraubenzieher. Und das würde dann dem Erdbeben entsprechen im Fall der Erde. Und ein zweites Mal mit meinem nassen Finger. Und die Tonhöhe von diesen 2 Schwingungen ist genau dieselbe.
Wie die Wellen im Meer sind diese Schwingungen immer da. 24 Stunden am Tag, Jahr ein, Jahr aus. Das brachte die Forscher auf eine Idee. Könnten die Meereswellen die Ursache für das Brummen der Erde sein? Gemeinsam mit Ozeanographen suchen sie nach einer plausiblen Erklärung. Denn die Geräusche verschwinden nie vollständig, verstärken sich aber, wenn es stürmt. Schließlich wagen sie eine Hypothese. Die Erde wird durch die Wellen des Meeres angeregt und schwingt vertikal nach oben und nach unten. Dieter Kurle, damals Doktorand an der Universität Stuttgart, spinnt diesen Gedanken weiter. Erdbeben lassen sich mit den Seismometern in vertikalen und horizontalen Schwingungen nachweisen. Wäre es also denkbar, dass es auch horizontale Schwingungen gibt, die nichts mit Erdbeben zu tun haben? Er analysiert die Daten zurück bis ins Jahr 1990 und findet heraus, dass die Erde tatsächlich auch horizontal hin und her schwingt.
Es ist naheliegend, dass es dieselben Ursachen sind wie für diese vertikalen Hintergrundschwingungen, die man schon etwas länger kannte. Und natürlich drückt das Wasser nicht nur, sondern an der Küste schlägt es auf die Kontinente auf die festen Landmassen. Und so ist es relativ leicht nachzuvollziehen, dass dann auch horizontale Kräfte auf die Erdkruste ausgeübt werden.
Machst du gleich zu?
Das aber müssen die Forscher wohl noch beweisen. Aber immerhin ist bereits so viel klar. Es gibt dieses leise Brummen, das existiert, seit es die Ozeane auf der Erde gibt.
geheimnisvoll. Was will uns die Erde nur damit sagen? Von uns bekommen Sie morgen wieder klare Botschaften. Machen Sie es gut. Bis dann.